My name is Kinsley Smith. I'm a housewife celebrating 20 years of marriage. Our family is harmonious, and my husband David cherishes us deeply. I've lived my life devoted to my family, trusting in David. Our twin sons, for some reason, are prodigies with IQs of 150. They easily got into prestigious universities and are currently interning at the major corporation where David works. Though we've faced storms at times, our household has been smooth sailing. However, a storm that seemed it might sink us has arrived. It happened one afternoon. I decided to check out a slightly different store and extended my trip to a station a few miles away. As I wandered around with heavy bags, I encountered a man resembling my husband. Oh. What caught my attention was the woman next to him. She was noticeably younger than me and radiated an unreal beauty. This stunning woman was leaning on my husband, who's nearly 50, arm in arm, smiling blissfully. Is this? The words affair and infidelity came to mind. Unable to confront them, I ended up just taking a photo. By evening, drained of the energy to cook, I sat on the living room couch, staring at the photo on my smartphone. Then, I knew David had come home. What's wrong? There he was, seemingly unchanged. As if the man I saw today was someone else. But I had looked at the photo over and over. I even zoomed in. The suit, the bag, the hairstyle. In the photo were unmistakably David's. Did you happen to walk in front of the station a few miles away today? Attention emanated from him. Well, what time? In the evening. Not sure. She's very beautiful, isn't she? Almost doesn't look like an ordinary person, so beautiful. Like an actress or a model. Yes. That woman, yeah. She must be a model associated with the company. We're planning to launch a new commercial, so she's probably involved in that. Is that so? But you two seemed quite close. I showed him the smartphone I was holding. After a moment of silence, David confessed everything. Hearing the truth, I was speechless. I can't cook tonight. I'm sorry. Please eat out. Okay. With a guilty look, David turned and left the house. As he did, the tears I had been holding back started to flow. My sons returned home as David left and noticed me crying, but I couldn't respond to their questions. However, seeing the smartphone on the table, they were speechless. Mom, this. I've been deceived for 15 years. That's all I could finally say. What do you mean? He's been cheating? Hey, Jack. This woman. Yeah. Mom, what are you gonna do? Even if asked what to do, I have no answer. David said he loves this woman. But he also said he couldn't destroy our family. Yet, recalling the happy look on his face at that moment, it's hard to believe those were his true feelings. Maybe he really wants to live his life with her. Such thoughts keep coming to me. I always thought I was loved by my husband. I believed that living with David was my entire life. And yet, to think it has come to this. Maybe it's better to separate, for David's sake. Perhaps that would be best for him. When did Dad start doing this? 15 years ago, right? She said she's been deceived for 15 years. Oh, did she mention that? Listen properly. But it's too shocking. Mom must be more shocked. Yeah. How old is this woman? Hard to say, she's incredibly beautiful. Looks to be in her early 30s. She's 40. 40, huh? She's quite old then. A real piece of work. To think she'd get involved with someone like Dad. She could be one of the world's 7 wonders. Dad wants to live with this woman. Really? Yeah, he said that. But he also doesn't want to ruin our lives. That's impossible. You can't have both. Maybe if you're really rich. Right, an average employee can't manage that. Where does Dad's heart truly lie? His true feelings? Yeah, If his desire to live with her is real, holding him back won't make anyone happy. But why? I wonder why I never noticed that Dad's heart wasn't here. Was I too happy? Too happy? Yes, maybe I was so happy that I thought this was normal and couldn't read Dad's feelings. Mom, you're too kind. Dad's the one who cheated, you have every right to be angry. His feelings don't matter. But I'm the one who let it happen. Mom did everything a wife should do. There's no way he had complaints. You always make delicious meals. This is Dad's fault. That's right, Mom, you shouldn't blame yourself. But Dad's face was so happy. I've never seen him look that happy. Maybe he's happier with her than with me. But holding him back would only cause him pain. It's better if we split up, isn't it? Dad wants to be with her. If I wish for Dad's happiness, I should step aside, shouldn't I? Are you serious? Even though Dad is the one at fault? I think it's for the best. Well, if Mom thinks so, we can't stop her, but... Yeah, thank you. I think it's best to separate for Dad's sake too. It's for his happiness, more than staying with me. Even though I think this, the tears still come. It's like losing the air around me, and without air, you can't breathe. He was that important to me, and to think it has come to this. Mom, are you really okay with splitting up? Yeah, it's inevitable. For Dad to be happy, it's better if I step back. I believe that's what happiness is. Even if I've been deceived all this time, I've received so much happiness from him. Okay, then, Mom. You mind if I show him hell? Hell? Yeah, that's right. It's crazy that only Mom has to draw the short straw for Dad's and that woman's sake. If we're splitting up anyway, might as well make Dad taste hell. That's right. If we're doing this, might as well teach him a real lesson. Hearing my son's words made me think my decision to separate for my husband's sake was a lie. Splitting up for his happiness is just a nice idea. Inside me, there's hatred for being deceived for 15 years. It's definitely there. Yet, why was I trying to suppress those feelings? If I could really show him hell, if I could really drop him into it, then I want to do that. I want to make my husband, who betrayed our family, suffer just as much. So, Mom, what do you think? Well, but how? That's what we need to figure out now. After all, we don't know what weaknesses he has. First, we need to thoroughly research to find out what method would be most effective. That's right. Even if we set a trap, if it doesn't cause enough pain, it's a waste. Yeah, I agree. We have to make him regret it to the bone. After all, he made Mom cry. My sons, contemplating what they said, left my side and went into their rooms. Even as I thought about preparing food for them, I couldn't bring myself to move and ended up crawling into bed. No matter how much I try to be strong, the tears just keep flowing. Despite all the pain I'm feeling, where is my husband now, and what is he doing? Maybe he's gone to her. Such thoughts make me suffer even more. If possible, I wish I could go back to just a few hours ago, not knowing any of this, and return to the life of cooking for my husband and gathering around the table with my family, as usual. But that's impossible. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? No matter how much I regret, it's futile and I can't stop the tears. The next day, my sons said they had work and left the house. David never came back. Always making sure his shirts were washed and ironed, the David who didn't return must be wearing crumpled shirts by now. I wonder where he is and what he's doing. Such thoughts come to mind, but there's nothing I can do. After seeing my sons off, all I could do again was crawl back into bed. Unlike me, my sons had begun to take decisive steps towards revenge. Looks like Dad didn't come home last night. Yeah, seems like it. That's why Mom is even more upset. There's no point in getting down about it. can't help it. We just have to do what we can for her. I wonder if Dad's at work? Yeah, I saw him earlier. Working in his crumpled shirt. If he didn't come home, that figures. So, how are we gonna get our revenge? We need to figure out his moves first. Right. By the way, that woman in the photo, that's her, isn't it? One of the sons glanced towards the woman in the photo. Yeah, 90% sure it's her. It's tough to say 100% because it's a photo. What do we do? Follow them on the way back? Sounds good, I'll follow Dad. Then, I'll follow her. Hard to say if they'll meet today though. No, they'll meet. They were caught by Mom yesterday. Or, Dad might have gone to her place last night. Even so, it'd be hard for him to come back home, so he'll likely go to her place. Indeed. That's some deep analysis. You were thinking the same thing, weren't you? Yeah, I was. And so, the sons decided to follow them separately. One after Dad, the other after the woman. However, despite leaving separately, both ended up at the same apartment building. Whoa! Jack! What's up, Sebastian? Looks like this might be her place, huh? Maybe. I couldn't find a name on the mailbox. Maybe it's a room just for their secret meetings? Could Dad have rented it? Should we check with the real estate agency? Yeah, I'll look into something else. Something else? Now that it's clear they're together, we need to tighten the noose. Right, makes sense. I'll leave that to you then. I'll handle this side. While attending university lectures, the two spent a week investigating David and the woman, managing their part-time jobs as well. It seems they found out several things, and on the night before Monday, they shared it with me. Mom, could you come to the office tomorrow? To the office? Yeah, there's something important. I'll show you Dad heading for hell tomorrow. But there's something I need to ask of you, the sons said, and then they shared their plan with me. The next afternoon, just as they had asked, I went to the office, and my sons were waiting for me at the entrance. Mom, we're gonna meet with the president now, but make sure you do what we asked you yesterday. Yes. I'll be fine. The sons exchanged looks and then got on the elevator to head to the top floor. When they arrived at the president's office, there was David's lover, Nevaeh. Just like when I saw her a week ago, her beauty was mesmerizing. The president, though frowning, unsure of what was happening, still carried an air of dignity. What's this about? Jack, Sebastian? Sorry to trouble you. We have something very important to discuss. But we can't proceed without one more actor in our play. Actor? At that moment, the door to the president's office was knocked, and David entered. David. Nevaeh. The two of them calling each other's names in front of the wife. I felt dizzy. What's going on here? It seemed the president was the only one who didn't understand. No, I didn't understand either. What exactly was the relationship between this Nevaeh and the president? First, let me introduce. President, Director Nevaeh. This woman is our mother, Kinsley, the wife of David. Oh, is that so? Mom, this is the president and his daughter, Nevaeh. His daughter? Yes, Nevaeh is the president's daughter and also a director. And she's also Dad's girlfriend. That's correct. What? Sorry. You're involved with my daughter while you have a wife? President, please hold off on the anger. It seems Dad and Nevaeh have been together for 15 years now. They've been living like a couple, spending time together in an apartment they rented after work, then going back to their respective homes. Is that so? Nevaeh, you. I'm sorry. Are you two in love, without a doubt? Yes. I love David. Even after 15 years, I never once thought about breaking up. Is it because you want to marry him? Yes, of course. Nevaeh. David is a married man. Sorry, but I can't stop these feelings. I'd rather be the woman in the shadows, as long as I can be by David's side. Do you want to marry Nevaeh, Dad? Hey, Jack! It's okay, you can tell us your true feelings. That is... David seemed unable to say the truth in this situation. Saying yes would hurt me, and saying no could provoke the president's wrath. Considering his future, he likely couldn't express his true feelings. Do you want to be with Nevaeh, Dad? Or was she just a fling? It was not just a fling. How could anyone be in a relationship for 15 years just for fun? Did you know Nevaeh was the president's daughter when you started dating her? No, it wasn't like that. When I first started dating Nevaeh, she was a radiant 25-year-old young lady. I thought there's no way such a beautiful lady would date a plain guy like me. But I hoped at least she would have dinner with me, and when I asked, she accepted. Then I hoped we could drink together, and she agreed to that too. With each occasion, my feelings grew stronger. And Nevaeh, did you feel the same? Yes. I knew he was married. Even though I knew it was wrong, I couldn't help falling for him. Just having dinner with David was enough for me. But once one wish was fulfilled, I found myself wanting more, like having drinks together. Before I knew it, David had become a significant part of my life, and our relationship deepened. Oh, I'm sorry. Nevaeh apologized for the depth of their relationship. It was after we became involved that she first told me she was the president's daughter. What a thing to do! To steal another woman's husband. Shameful. I'm sorry. But I couldn't stop my feelings. I thought many times that we had to break up, but... So, both of you want to be together? Yes. I'm truly sorry. If I'm just speaking my feelings, then yes. But when I think of his wife, I know it's something we shouldn't wish for. And you, David? David looked at the president and then at me. The president had an indescribable expression on his face. Well, that's to be expected. His daughter is in a romantic relationship with a married man, a company employee. But if his daughter has dedicated 15 years to a man only to be discarded now, that would be truly painful. As for me, I neither showed anger nor smiled broadly. David, Nevaeh is being honest with her feelings. You should respond to that. Yeah, sorry. I do want to be with her. Kinsley, if I can be with David, I'll support his career advancement. I've already been doing everything I can for him, but I'll strive even more for his sake. So, you're asking for my forgiveness? Yes. Yeah, Nevaeh has been really good to me. I even got a recommendation for a director position because of her. There's a director position offer? Yeah, it wasn't confirmed yet, so I hadn't told you, but it's true. I see. Congratulations. So, it's just Mom left. What do you want to do with Dad? Continue together or... Jack looked into my eyes and nodded. It was a signal for now's the time. Nevaeh is such a wonderful lady, and I've already spent 20 years with my husband. He says he's happy with Nevaeh. I saw them together the other day, and he truly looked happy. I can't crush that happiness out of selfishness. Therefore, I'll step aside. I've kept you waiting for a long time, Nevaeh, but please be happy with him from now on. Madam, are you really okay with this? Yes. If I wish for my husband's happiness and Nevaeh's happiness, that's the natural answer. Thank you. I'm sorry for my daughter's outrageous selfishness. If Nevaeh is willing to marry and Dad has the intention to, it's only right for Mom to gracefully step aside. We'll be here for Mom, so there's nothing to worry about. However, in exchange, please pay alimony and cover our college expenses until we graduate. And we'll also ask Nevaeh for compensation. After all, even if it's Dad's fault, the fact remains that a family was broken. Understood. I might not be able to fully compensate, but I'll do what I can. I'll transfer the house to you and the rest of the assets. I don't need them, so do as you please. No, if you're going to let my daughter marry you, I'll also provide a monthly allowance to ensure she can live comfortably. That's really something. Thank you. Mom hasn't worked for a long time, so hearing you say that will definitely help her. So, please don't hold a grudge against my daughter. Yes, of course. I bowed respectfully, never imagining that such an arrangement would be made. David, if you marry her, I promise you the director's position. President. Thank you so much. That's great for you, David. Yeah, thank you, Nevaeh. Thank you, Kinsley. David, promise you'll stay by her side forever. I'm counting on you. Yes, of course. David, Nevaeh, and the president were all thrilled. But this couldn't be the end. It wouldn't serve as revenge or send anyone to hell. The son smirked and moved the conversation to the next phase. So, Dad, you'll also pay off Nevaeh's debts, right? You're becoming a director, so it shouldn't be a problem, right? Debts? Yeah, about $200,000, right? Why so much? Well, Nevaeh has undergone gender reassignment surgery. It's not something to bring up now, but you must be well aware of it. Dad, there's no need to be shocked. You love her, after all. What do you mean? Nevaeh was originally a man. She felt a disconnect with her body and underwent gender reassignment surgery. The cost of the surgery and travel expenses led her to take on debt. Additionally, Nevaeh, when she was a man, had a very masculine appearance, so she also underwent cosmetic surgery to achieve her current look. You know a lot about it. Sorry, we had it investigated. All those expenses combined amount to about $200,000. And being a woman, the costs for cosmetics, clothes, bags, and so on. To maintain the image of a president's daughter, you inevitably go for high-end products, right? Yes, that's correct. So, the monthly payments are quite significant. But don't worry. After all, Dad's going to be a director. Right. Nevaeh's original name was Gabriel, you know. Gabriel. Yeah, such a good name, right? They wanted a strong boy so badly. They named him with that hope in mind. Is that so? David seemed completely unaware of this matter and turned pale. Moreover, David has prejudices against gender changes and homosexuality. This must truly feel like being cast into hell. And at this point, there's no way he could say he wants to back out. Well, normally, a parent would cover it, but I just can't understand men becoming women. So, I told him if you really want to do it, you have to find the money yourself. And he actually did it. I never thought he'd take out loans to undergo the surgery. Ah. The president wanted to raise you as a manly man, huh? Yeah, exactly. Things don't always go as planned. When I heard a boy was born, I dreamed of him taking a wife, having grandchildren. I thought Gabriel would become president one day, and the next generation would be led by my grandchildren. Ah, haha. Right. But then, being told she wanted to become a woman, it felt like everything vanished. I thought we had to choose the successor from among the employees, thinking no man would accept a woman who had been a man. I was prepared for her to remain single all her life. Yet, to find someone who'd stay by her side for life, how fortunate. Now I can rest easy. Ah, that's right. Since David is Jack's and Sebastian's father, if Nevaeh marries him, they would be my grandchildren. With their high IQs and capabilities, they could one day sit in the president's chair too. Wow. The company's future is secure. The president was overjoyed. Then Jack presented the divorce papers and asked for my signature. With everything already decided, I signed without hesitation, and the paper was passed to David, who signed it with a trembling hand. Since we can't register the marriage until 1 to 2 weeks after submitting the divorce papers, how about we write the marriage registration now, as it's a joyful occasion? That sounds good. It's best to do it here while everyone's present. Following Jack's suggestion, the president accepted, and Sebastian and I clapped our hands. Forced by the situation, David, with a shaking hand, signed the marriage registration form. "Congratulations," I said to Nevaeh, who responded with a happy smile. "Now, you two are essentially husband and wife. Congratulations! Isn't that wonderful?" However, unable to escape, David was crying alone. "Ah, David, are those tears of joy?" Nevaeh asked, but my sons and I knew better. These weren't tears of joy. That night, when David came back to pack his things, we helped to quickly get him out, but he broke down crying. "No, no! Why do I have to marry a man? Why is she a man?" "Well, you thought she was a woman for 15 years, so it's fine, right? You couldn't tell the difference." "But even if she looks like a woman, she's still a man. I don't want to marry a man." "You're becoming a director, there's no need to complain, right? And you won't find such a beauty among women." "What are you talking about? She's only beautiful because of plastic surgery. Maintaining that will cost a fortune." "You're a director, it's fine. She's a director too, no problem. Thanks to Dad, we're gonna be presidents. It's a win-win." Dad's affair turned out to be a jackpot for us. We don't even have to job hunt. I'm not happy at all. "You might be, but I have to marry a man." "That's the bed you made for yourself." "Maybe, but I can't accept this. Her name was Genta, for crying out loud. Totally a man." "It's cruel to say that. Her heart is female. And her body too. She's a beautiful woman now. My stepmother." "Indeed. Our stepmother, and the president's daughter no less. We hit the jackpot." "No, no. Kinsley, let's start over. Please, I beg you. I'll apologize, just give me another chance." "What about your job?" "I'll quit. Better to quit than to marry a man." "If you quit, the boys won't become presidents. You've been with her for 15 years, you'll be fine. You've managed to deceive us all this time, just deceive yourself from now on." "Deceive myself?" "Yeah. Just convince yourself she's female. Do it for your sons. Trick yourself into it." "No, no, no." Despite his protests, we quickly packed his belongings and kicked him out. Later, a grand wedding took place, and David became Nevaeh's husband. He smiled throughout the ceremony, but he wasn't happy. Yet, he married her and started a new life as a couple. However, David never rose above the director position. Meanwhile, Nevaeh became a board member, showing her prowess. Being busy, she couldn't do the housework, leaving David, who had never done it before, to take over domestic duties. Despite how busy Nevaeh is, one might expect her to lend a helping hand to David, but that was not the case at all. Despite her kindness before, Nevaeh turned into a tyrant, losing all her former gentleness. She seemed more like a beautiful man now. Consequently, I started receiving frequent complaint emails from David. Their content was always, "This is hell. I have to embrace a man at night, and I can't escape. This is pure hell." Receiving such emails, our family would read them together, laughing. I received a substantial alimony and a significant monthly allowance. Moreover, a significant amount of money is deposited into our accounts every month as living expenses. The boys secured jobs at the company and were promised the presidency. My life is secured until the end. Truly, I am the victor. Today's wine tastes exceptionally delicious. Well, from today onwards, it's your job to take care of 7 of us. The one standing beyond the open door was my son, whom I hadn't seen for several months. Behind him were his wife and children, standing with large bags. Even though I tried to convey that it was rude to suddenly invade in such large numbers, my son seemed unfazed. His manner of pushing himself in while brushing off my protests was nothing short of terrifying. Why had my son come back? A few months ago, when I criticized my son and his wife for their extravagant spending, my son was the one who called me a greedy old hag and cut off contact. My son, much stronger than me, easily pushed open the door and entered the foyer. There's obviously not enough room for 7 people, right? So. My son extended his arms and firmly grasped my shoulders. Smiling at my wincing from pain, he said, "Once you're done with cleaning and laundry, Mom, you can sleep in the hallway. My name is Mercy, living off a pension at 75, just an ordinary woman. Before marriage, I worked vigorously at a company. Initially, work was enjoyable, and with many women around, there was an understanding of women working overtime. At that time, there was a societal trend of women entering the home upon marriage. However, the company said to me, 'You're doing great work for us, so if possible, we'd like you to stay.' What do you think? It was a fulfilling job, but my husband expressed his wish for me to become a housewife, so I became one upon marriage. I'm also quite skilled at cooking, and by adding a little extra to my usual dishes, I feel like I can make delicious meals like a pro. I've always admired spending time cooking with that extra touch. Becoming a housewife secretly made me happy, thinking, I'll have more time for my hobby of sewing. We only had one child, Neil, but I believe our life as a family of 3 was filled with happy moments. When Neil was young and in the early years of elementary school, I was delighted that he was affectionate. By the time he reached middle school, Neil entered his rebellious phase, distancing himself from me emotionally at times, but he was blessed with good friends. I've heard that the friend he became close to in middle school is still in touch with him. During high school, Neil, influenced by his friends or perhaps thinking about university, focused on his studies. My husband, while holding on to traditional beliefs, cooperatively helped with raising our child, making parenting enjoyable. Blessed with supportive mom friends around me, during times like high school entrance exams and university entrance exams, I had companions to consult with about how to respond to my child, what advice would be best, and what support would help them concentrate on studying. Since my son hadn't saved up for the wedding expenses, I covered most of the costs myself. My husband worked hard and provided for the family, so we never struggled and lived a peaceful life. My hardworking husband, both in his job and with parenting, passed away from illness 5 years ago. Now, I live alone. My income for living comes from my pension and the savings my husband left behind. Using my sewing hobby, I create items and sell them on online marketplaces, earning a small income. With a decent amount of money and no financial worries, besides my hobby, I also volunteer with friends, leading a fulfilling life. Aside from volunteering with friends, we enjoy fun days together, like going out for lunch. My son Neil is now 44 years old. He got married 17 years ago and started a family. His wife, Lisa, is 40 years old. We've known each other since a long time, and I remember she used to have a quiet demeanor back in our student days. But that image changed as our relationship grew longer. Between my sons, they have 3 children. Currently, there's a 14-year-old grandchild, followed by 10 and 8-year-olds. When the grandchildren were small, my son and his wife never really demanded much, and our relationship was good. To ensure I didn't treat her like an unwelcome mother-in-law, I refrained from sudden visits and gave money for celebrations, allowing her to buy whatever she liked. Thanks to that, I thought we maintained a good relationship while keeping a reasonable distance. However, recently, the situation has changed drastically. My daughter-in-law has started demanding gifts for the grandchildren every week and asking for expensive dinners at fancy restaurants almost regularly. While suggesting going out to eat, they don't even make a gesture of taking out their wallets. What's more, they always insist on going to expensive restaurants every single time. But if it were just about the meals, it would have been tolerable. Seeing my grandchildren happily enjoying their food with smiles on their faces made me happy too. Gradually, Lisa started demanding ridiculously expensive accessories that even middle schoolers wouldn't wear. I've known Lisa since my son's high school days, so I know her from way back. During her student days, Lisa was very quiet, neither standing out nor causing any trouble. To see her become so brazen now, I can't help but sigh and think that I misjudged her. She wasn't originally rude, but the moment she felt she could say anything to us, she became domineering. As our relatives got to know her true nature, we gradually distanced ourselves from her. The only reason we still associate with them is that they all have strong personalities. Lisa, who decided I was easy to manipulate, started demanding rings, necklaces, branded wallets, and bags. I once confronted her, asking, "Why do you need such expensive items? These are things only you will use, right?" She insisted that everything was for the children. Starting from the outfit for elementary school PTA meeting to the necessary clothes for class visits. "These clothes can only go with designer name bags," she'd say. But I don't have the luxury to buy designer name bags just for such reasons. When I ignored her requests and brushed them off, she stopped demanding further. Instead, she started aiming for things that were difficult to refuse. She would intrude while I was preparing dinner and say, "Could you make some dishes for our home too?" If I declined, she'd say, "Well, anything will do," and help herself to the fridge, taking away leftovers or just the packs of meat I had recently bought. Strongly trying to stop them, they just laugh it off and say thanks a lot while waving their arms, and then they just leave on their own. Recent behavior of my daughter-in-law makes me wonder if it's normal for her to do such things. While it's common to hear about daughters-in-law being bullied in mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues, is it normal for me, as a mother-in-law, to be so exhausted? Suddenly visiting our home and then demanding meals for the whole family, how audacious. But despite that, they never come for summer vacation or Christmas. During Christmas, they ask for expensive gifts for the grandchildren, gorge on holiday dishes, and then leave without even greeting other relatives. No matter how many times I've warned them, they just brush it off, like one summer. "I didn't bring enough spending money for kids this year, so I'm asking for it for all the kids." When I confronted them strongly, Neil just looked at me with a sigh, even clicked his tongue. To the granny living alone, who took the time to visit and spend time with the grandkids, what's with that tone? Well, forget it then, I won't contact this unreasonable granny anymore. Who's being unreasonable here? Fine, I won't contact you guys either. Don't ever come back. Lisa didn't even look at us and quickly left with the children. Since then, there haven't been as many frequent phone calls or sudden visits. After that, I got even busier with my hobby of sewing and volunteering, and days without involvement with my son continued. Blessed with friends around, we still had enjoyable and busy days, like regularly going out for lunch. I've stopped contacting my son, and peaceful and calm times have passed. Continuing with my hobby of sewing and maintaining the same frequency of volunteering and lunch with friends, I had a moderately stimulating life, and those days were happy. During volunteering, people would say, "Thanks a lot, Mercy," acknowledging me, which made me very happy. I was originally blessed with many friends and a sociable personality. So it became a daily occurrence for my cell phone to ring with messages from friends. When an email came with a ping, signaling another invitation, and the content was always gentle, I couldn't help but smile. About 3 years into our estrangement, the landline at home rang after a long time. The caller was my son. I immediately blocked his number on my cell phone, but I didn't know how to do that with the landline. Until then, we hadn't received any contact, so I wondered what could be happening now. Answering the phone, I heard my son's voice saying, "Hello, Mom?" Then I faintly heard my daughter-in-law asking from the other end, "Did you get through to my mother?" Apparently, my son and his wife were calling together. Neil didn't ask how I was or even say it had been a while. "I need money," he said without any remorse, just laughing. As I was about to hang up in disbelief, I heard Neil's sighing voice. "Actually, Mom, I got fired from my job." "What?" Reacting like that probably wasn't good. Neil must have felt like I was listening because he started rambling quickly. "I had a little health issue, and I made some mistakes during that time. I ended up making some pretty big mistakes, and they told me to take responsibility. So, without even a farewell party, I got fired." "I see. That must have been tough." Hang in there. Honestly, I couldn't find any words other than so what? I can almost predict what my son will say next after losing his job and asking for money. As I was about to abruptly end the conversation and hang up, Neil's desperate voice stopped me. Neil himself seemed to have never expected to be lent money. If money's a problem, then let's live together again. What? Mom, think about it. You, me, and the adorable grandkids can live happily together. We'll save on rent. Isn't this what they call mutual support? I'll be in touch again, and I'll need you to clean the house. Don't be ridiculous. There's no way I could be happy living with you and the grandkids. You're the one who said you wanted to sever ties with me as your mother, and now you're shamelessly flipping the script because you're in trouble. You should be relying on Lisa. Don't count on me. Unable to stay silent in the face of such selfishness, I raised my voice for the first time in a while. Then, from a distance, I could hear my daughter-in-law's voice. I'm already working full-time. But even with 3 kids, we can't make ends meet, so I want to rely on you, mother-in-law. Don't you have any love for your son and grandchildren? No, I don't. Living with you would just mean being treated like a maid and having my money drained. I refuse to live together or provide any financial assistance. Don't contact me again. I slammed the receiver down with a heavy sigh, but the phone immediately started ringing again. Fed up with the incessant ringing, I picked up the receiver between incoming calls. While it meant missing other calls, those with real business would call my cell phone. However, the calls from my son and his wife wouldn't stop. When I put the phone back in the receiver's hands to keep it up, I get a call at a moment's notice. Growing tired of ignoring them, I reached out to a close friend. Then, on a whim, I called my close businessman friend on my cell phone. Hello? Could you tell me how to block calls on a landline? Finally restoring peace, 3 months passed by. The house was mostly tidy, so I was making drawstring patches with my sewing. Suddenly, ding-dong went the doorbell. It was unusual for the doorbell to ring at an unplanned time, so I glanced at the monitor showing the front door. There, I saw the faces of my son and his wife. All that crossed my mind was a bad feeling. If my son and his family come inside, they'll just get in the way. Thinking to shoo them away, I said, I'm busy right now. Please go home. But my son said, don't say that. We've come all this way. We have something important to discuss. Please hear us out, as he gestured towards the back. Not only my son's family, but also Lisa's parents were there. My son, his wife, 3 grandchildren, and Lisa's parents, a total of 7 people, came barging in. And they all had carry-on bags and even large luggage with them. It would be awkward to send away not just my son's family but also Lisa's parents. If I were to turn away guests carrying such large luggage, and if there were any argument at the doorstep, I'd be conscious of the neighbors' gaze. Honestly, I didn't want to let them into the house, but reluctantly, I decided to let them into the guest room. I directed my son, his wife, and Lisa's parents to the guest room while the grandchildren were entertained upstairs. I could hear the grandchildren giggling and saying, "This room is so big." Without consulting me at all, my son blurted out, "Mom, let's live together. Look, we've even brought our stuff," as he gestured at the luggage. Instinctively, I said, living together is out of the question. Take your things and go home. But such a refusal didn't deter my son. He said, "Mom, we're trying to be good children by living together. We want to give you the joy of taking care of your grandchildren in your old age. Isn't that being filial? Me taking care of you?" in a condescending tone. With a sigh of exasperation, I said, "Listen, as you know, I'm 75 years old. It's impossible for me, at my age, to take care of grandchildren." I was disillusioned by how, despite firmly declining over the phone, it seemed as if it never happened. Relying on a son who only thinks of himself is honestly just unnecessary meddling. Mercy, Neil's got a point. Living together would be easier for you too. You'd be happy seeing your grandkids every day, they insisted. The thought of living with my son's family made me shudder at how much money I would be drained of and how much effort I would have to put in. Even Lisa chimed in, "Considering your age, Mercy, it would be better for you to live with us. You'll have the joy of spending time with your cute grandkids." I had barely spoken to Lisa's parents since our wedding, let alone seen them. Lisa's parents seemed to spoil her as an only child, and she, in turn, seemed to have been raised with that skewed parental affection. Now even Lisa's parents chimed in, saying, "Hey, Mercy, let's cooperate since we're all getting older." Truly typical of Lisa's parents. They must have had a significant influence on her personality. Despite not knowing what kind of life they led, they seemed insistent on echoing Lisa's words. Perhaps feeling empowered by their numbers, Neil joked, "Being the one to give our dear old mom the joy of caring for a lively family in her short twilight years makes me the model son, right?" I couldn't help but wonder if Neil and Lisa were trying to repay me for what I'd done for them all these years. It infuriated me how they seemed to forget that I had been the one covering the expenses for the grandkids, using my money as if it were limitless, all in the name of because Lisa wants it or because Neil needs it. And Lisa's parents seemed to back her every word. "Hey Mercy, our Lisa is a smart girl. Let's go along with what Lisa says," they said, smiling too sweetly. That overly sweet smile started to give me an uneasy feeling. So, I've made sure to avoid getting involved with Lisa's parents. It's precisely because we haven't met since the wedding that their audacity to intervene so boldly now leaves me not just bewildered but feeling downright brazen. Lisa's parents had quite the nerve. "Mom, we're here to stay, and we're going to live together. You'll be happy. Starting today, we'll be living in this house," my son said, grinning. He then continued, "We need your room, so from today, you'll be sleeping in the hallway," he said, dismissing me. To add insult to injury, his wife Lisa joined in with a thin smile, saying, "Please take care of us, mother-in-law." I didn't want to be manipulated any further by my son's family or Lisa's parents. With that thought in mind, I pushed past them and returned to my room upstairs. In just a few minutes, I was ready to leave, carrying my suitcase downstairs, much to the surprise of my son's family and Lisa's parents. "I'm leaving, so do as you please," I said, leaving my son speechless. Neil asked, "But what about the household chores here?" And Lisa panicked, "Yes, exactly, I thought I'd finally be free from chores." Upon hearing those words, I realized they intended to treat me like a maid. The audacity of Neil, who had been fired and had no job, and Lisa, who couldn't cover the family's living expenses with just her part-time job, left me speechless. And Lisa's parents, who came along as a package deal, were clearly too much to handle. I told my son and his wife, "I've already sold this house because managing it alone became too difficult. If you want to live here, you'll need to buy it back." My son and his wife seemed puzzled by what I was saying. Continuing, I said, "Originally, I planned to move from this house and have been preparing for it for the past 3 months." To which my son replied, "But there are still things in this guest room." I continued, "We originally planned to move out of this house and had been preparing for 3 months, to which my son replied, "You have all your things in this guest room." Well, those were meant to be disposed of last. Most of the things here were unnecessary for the new house. What wasn't needed was naturally discarded. What was necessary, I took to the new house, I explained. "If Neil and you want to live here, you'll have to buy back this house." "Well, since it was well maintained and close to the station, it won't be cheap," I added. Since the guest room only had a low table and simple interior, my son didn't seem to notice at all. I had arranged for the removal company to take away all the items in the guest room once I had finished unpacking. So there were only reception items in the guest room. Then the son and his wife came to me and said, "Mom, I'm your precious son. Aren't the kids cute grandchildren to you?" and pleaded with tears. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. To Neil, I said, "My dear sons disappeared 3 years ago. Why are you telling me this now? You should just go back to your home. I'm not obliged to take care of a 44-year-old grown-up son now." Upon hearing that, the son said, we've already canceled the apartment we were living in. Because without a job, we can't pay the rent. Life is tough with Lisa's income. We have no choice but to rely on you, Mom. Even if they say that, I'm not obliged to support not only my son's family but also Lisa's parents. To my son's words, I retorted, "What are you talking about? It's fine if you find a job, and if Lisa continues her full-time job, you can manage your life. Instead of making excuses for being unemployed, go and find a job. You're the breadwinner, Neil, it's up to you. My child-rearing days are over. There's no obligation to support Neil now." My son also said, "Maybe because I can't find a job right away, you think I'm asking for your help," he said, angry. "Well then, why don't you ask Lisa's parents for help? They are understanding people for Lisa, and it would be easier for Neil to live with them," I said. Lisa said, "Our parents sold their house and came here. We have nowhere else to go. As for me," I said, "this house is no longer mine. If you want it, you'll have to go to a real estate agent and buy it." Seeing the situation of my sons, I thought they really had nowhere else to go. Well, it seems my son and his wife have no home to return to. However, this is not a home for Neil either. I can only say I'm amazed at my son and his wife. I was shocked to realize that they really thought they could live with me without my consent. It's outrageous that Lisa's parents are also coming to live in my house, along with my son and his wife. And then, Lisa's parents also said, "If you're also a parent, isn't it natural to take care of your son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren?" How shameless can Lisa's parents be? But just because of that, I'm not obligated to take care of Lisa's parents. Besides, if you're also parents, why don't you take care of your daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren? Moreover, Neil and I cut ties 3 years ago. I consider my son already dead. So, I don't want to be relied on now. This house is already sold, and the next one is a one-room apartment. There's no space for you, I said sarcastically and bitterly. Even though I have a volunteering spirit, my heart is not so big as to support my estranged son and his wife. I'm helpless as long as I don't have a home. And for me, living on a pension, there's nothing I can do for Neil and his family. I'm too preoccupied with my own retirement plans. Certainly, our longtime home holds many memories with my husband. Even though it was a better time than now, how hard my husband worked to buy this house. And not only my husband, but also many cherished memories with Neil. Now they are nostalgic memories that bring tears to my eyes. Is it irresponsible as a parent to disown the only son we raised with care? But Neil is already over 40, married, and has 3 children. If parents still have responsibility even in such a case, then surely I must have been wrong in my child rearing. While my heart aches heavily, Neil and his wife are blaming each other. It seems no one had anticipated that I would sell this house under any circumstance. Indeed, it's risky for me, in my 70s, to sell a fully paid-off house. Honestly, if my relationship with Neil and his family hadn't deteriorated, I wouldn't have done such a thing. Seemingly forgetting about me entirely, both Lisa and her parents were furious at their son-in-law Neil. "It's Neil's fault for lying, all the blame lies with Neil," said Lisa's parents, angry. Lisa was furious, saying, "Didn't you confirm with Dad that we would never sell the house full of his memories? Isn't the plan ruined now?" Actually, the landlord of the apartment where my son and his wife lived was a very close friend of mine from a long time ago. Knowing that the landlord of Neil's apartment was a friend, I had been curious since Neil mentioned living together 3 months ago, so I decided to give my friend a call. What I heard from my friend was that, actually, my son had been discussing giving up the apartment for the past 4 months. To be honest, I was dumbfounded by my son's actions, but I was glad to know about their plans beforehand. Furthermore, I learned from my friend, who is also the landlord, that my son had said, "I want to live with Mom and let her take care of the kids a little. I want to take care of her while she's still healthy." Knowing this, I prepared various alternatives to avoid living with my son and his family. At my current age of 75, I simply don't have the energy to take care of my endlessly energetic children. and I can foresee being burdened with household chores when my son and his wife come over. Not only that, but I also felt a sense of crisis that if we lived together, I would not only be responsible for taking care of my son and his family but also be financially exploited as their ATM. For about a week, I thought about what kind of environment would be comfortable for me to live in. I considered whether I could live happily while considering my physical capabilities. This house is too big for me to manage living alone. I'm still struggling to manage it even now. After much consideration, I decided to sell this house and move into residential facility for elderly. Since the senior living facility is not as spacious as a standalone house, I had to move out the necessary items. I needed to dispose of things that wouldn't fit into the senior living facility, but with my wide circle of friends, it was easy. I sold items such as furniture, clothes, antiques, and even many books left behind by my late husband to secondhand stores. I donated everything I hadn't used in years and items suitable for the Volunteer Facilities Bazaar, which helped with the organization. I went to the city office and obtained the necessary paperwork for the move and received information about what was needed. I completed most of the moving procedures and preparations 4 days ago. As I finished the remaining procedures for electricity, gas, water, etc., it was a nostalgic moment when I was at the beloved house. Just as I was about to leave the house after bidding it farewell, my son showed up. As I was leaving the house, my grandchildren, who had been playing upstairs, seemed to have overheard my conversation with my son and peeked their heads out. Encouraged by their parents' looks, my grandchildren, especially the 14-year-old, said, "Grandma, abandoning us and Dad like this is heartless." Then he continued, "Grandma should live with us since she's all alone. And she should give all her money to Dad and Mom." Hearing this, my grandchildren, ages 10 and 7, said, "That's right. That's right," and they said it as if their son and his wife had been well educated. Listening to my grandchildren's comments, I couldn't help but wonder where I went wrong in raising my son. However, my choices regarding Neil and Lisa were mine to make. Still, seeing my grandchildren's reactions, I knew they would face challenges in the future, but it was beyond my control and knowledge. In an attempt to reason with my grandchildren, I suggested, "Why don't you ask Lisa's parents for help? There's no need for me to be involved." My son argued, "Lisa's parents have no savings, and they barely scrape by on their pensions. It's impossible for them. Having our family here would ensure you have a good life, Mom." I sighed in exasperation. Neil is an adult. He should find a job while Lisa works part-time. If Lisa works, she could rent an apartment in her name. Neil's old landlord is willing to keep the apartment vacant for a while since we won't be living here. If Lisa's part-time job and Neil's unemployment can secure the house loan, then you can buy back the house, I advised. After leaving the house, I contacted a real estate agent. At my age, I just want to live within my means. Subsequently, it seems my son's family tried to reclaim the house I sold. It seems Neil tried to repurchase the house, which holds memories for him, by visiting a real estate agency. He provided his former family's address and said, "I want to buy this property." Since it's a significant purchase, there's a loan assessment involved. Unfortunately, it seems the loan application, based solely on Lisa's part-time job, didn't pass. With a son who's unemployed, they couldn't even discuss a loan. The house, with its good condition and location, was too expensive to buy back, and it seems Neil's budget couldn't keep up, making it impossible to purchase it with a loan over their budget. Indeed, it was too expensive for an unemployed son and a wife with a part-time job. They persuaded the landlord of the apartment where the family previously lived, accommodating a total of 7 people, including Lisa's parents. While the landlord secured his income, he expressed concerns about avoiding any issues, stating, "Neighborhood disputes are the most troublesome." Despite living on the landlord's goodwill, the apartment feels cramped for 7 people, especially with young children, causing considerable stress. Furthermore, living in a small space with Lisa's parents adds even more stress, leading to frustration in their daily lives. A friend who lives near Neil's apartment informed me that Neil and Lisa are visibly struggling. Although Neil found a full-time job, I heard that his lack of qualifications results in a meager salary. With the money from selling the house, the savings my husband left, and my monthly pension, I can afford a reasonably good elderly-friendly apartment. I enjoy my hobbies like sewing, volunteering, and dining with friends, leading a content life. The environment hasn't changed much, and I feel peaceful and happy. Joining a gateball club after moving to the senior apartment has brought me more enjoyable moments than before. Having more friends from the gateball club makes each day enjoyable. Additionally, I've formed a close bond with a gentleman, adding excitement to my life, making each day feel fresh. I am not thinking of getting married now, but it has been a happy time for me to be of service to someone else. I was happy to be having a good time with someone who is good to me. I hope I can continue to be as energetic and happy as I am now. Wait a minute. That's too sudden. You like this, don't you? She wouldn't do this for you. Don't say that, sis. Call me by my name, like you always do. I was standing in front of the bedroom door. It dawned on me right then that my husband's lover was my own sister. A rage boiled within me, and I pinched my hand to calm the urge to burst in. I need to keep my cool. I decided to pull out my smartphone and start recording the conversation. Never would I have guessed that she was the other woman. I realized something was off when I got home. I'm home. There was a pair of women's shoes at the entrance that I didn't recognize. I instantly knew he had brought a woman home. Hearing voices from the bedroom upstairs, I moved quickly to the door. Their voices were loud enough to fill the house, indicating they were still enjoying themselves. But why did you choose this house today? Because it's more thrilling, isn't it? I guess so, but we usually meet at our parents' place. We were careful not to get caught before. Well, she is so clueless she never noticed. You're right about that. She'd never imagine us doing this. Such a fool. Now I understood why I hadn't noticed their affair. They had been meeting secretly at our parents' house. Still, I continued to record, thinking this would serve as evidence. I wondered what our parents would think upon hearing this. It was the only way to keep my sanity. I considered confronting them, but my feet wouldn't move. Entering the room meant witnessing them in the act. Something I instinctively didn't want to see. Hey, when are you going to give me a child? No, that would be bad. Your husband would find out. It'll be fine. If you sleep with him later, he won't suspect a thing. He's so oblivious. What a terrible wife. Not as bad as you. Listening to their conversation made my head ache and brought on nausea. I was at my limit. I decided to call out to my husband. Where are you? Realizing my presence, they panicked, and I heard the sound of a window opening. They probably tried to hide on the balcony. But that was the worst decision they could make. Because, of all days, it was heavily snowing today. Well, that was a mistake. I slowly entered the room. Clothes were scattered all over. They had gone outside completely naked. Looking out, I saw them trying to hide at the edge, curled up small. I immediately locked the door. Now, I was thinking about what kind of punishment to give them. I never thought I'd be this thrilled. My name is Emma, I'm 34 years old and I work in sales at a local company. I lived with my husband, Tom, who is 3 years older than me. I met Tom while on a sales visit. In my mid-20s, I had just changed jobs and was still getting used to the work. I remember how kindly he treated me, even then. Thank you very much. Not at all. Keep up the good work. Yes. At that time, I just thought he was a nice person. It took some time before we met again, but it turned out to be a fateful encounter. I have an older sister named Amelia, and it turned out that Tom was one of her classmates in both high school and college. Amelia had gotten married 3 years ago, and Tom was one of the attendees at her wedding. Do you remember me? From the sales visit. Right. Who would have thought we'd meet here? Excuse me, but how do you know my sister? Amelia and I were classmates in high school and college. I see. As we chatted amiably, the day's main character, my sister, came over. Huh? You two know each other? Well, from work. No, it wasn't any trouble. But thanks to you, I managed to secure a contract. That must have been because of your own skills. As this back and forth continued, my sister began to laugh. What's so funny? Just thinking you two seem to get along pretty well. Don't tease me. I'm quite serious, actually. Thanks to my sister's mediation, Tom and I exchanged contact information. However, my sister can be quite pushy, so I thought Tom might have been bothered by it. But about a week after exchanging contacts, he called. Hello? Sorry for calling out of the blue. It's okay. What's up? What is it? How about we go out for dinner sometime? Yes, sure. I found myself agreeing reflexively. I'll call you back then. And with that, the call ended. I wasn't opposed to the idea, but it was too late to decline. To be honest, I didn't have much experience with romance and didn't know what to do. It was just dinner, but I was still nervous. At that time, I was still living at my parents' house, so I decided to consult with my sister. Even after getting married, she wanted to stay living with our parents, so she remained at home. Wow, you got asked out. That's great. No, it's not about being great. I have no experience with this kind of thing. Then, you did the right thing by coming to me for advice. My sister Amelia has always been popular. During our school days, she brought various guys home. I thought I could get some good advice from her, but that was a mistake. Even though she had calmed down after becoming an adult, she enjoyed forcing her opinions on me, the more introverted one. And how many times that made me cry. Emma, just go with the flow. With me around, you have nothing to worry about. So, what should I do? Well, how about flirting a bit? Huh? Tom is weak for that kind of thing. Wait. I'm just going to have dinner. What are you saying? It won't just end with dinner. And so, Amelia kept giving off-target advice. And the problem wasn't just her. Our parents doted on Amelia, so in a way, she did whatever she wanted. They preferred her, who got easily flattered, over the hard-to-handle me. I really wanted to move out right after graduating college, but they wouldn't allow it. They wanted to keep me close, even though they weren't particularly interested. And then the day of the dinner came. Good luck. Okay, I'm off. I think the dinner went well, ultimately. It was a lot more enjoyable than feeling cramped at home. If it's okay with you, could we meet again? If you're fine with someone like me, please. That's great. I'm not very used to women, you know. If you say that, I'm even less used to men. No, I'm definitely less experienced. No, it's me. While we were having this exchange, we ended up laughing together. It had been a long time since I had so much fun. It was only natural for us, gradually getting closer, to start dating. However, Amelia wasn't pleased about it. Despite having egged me on so much. What? You're really dating? Yes, but I never thought you'd actually date. Did you follow my advice? Of course not. How did this happen? The reason behind Amelia's failure to stir things up would come from an unexpected person. Really? Is that so? That person was Samuel, Amelia's husband. Yeah. It's true. You know I met Amelia in college, right? Yes, I've heard from my sister. I became good friends with Tom then. It seems he liked her since high school but never got a chance since Tom had a girlfriend at the time. But why are you telling me this? I overheard you talking the other day. But, you know, she's not all bad. My brother-in-law, Samuel, had a somewhat sad look on his face. He truly cared about Amelia. Yet, Amelia was still obsessing over a man she liked in the past. And this situation was deeper and more serious than I had thought, leading to unbelievable circumstances. We started dating without issues, but Amelia began to constantly check on my activities. Her behavior was abnormal, coming to my room and not leaving until she heard an answer that satisfied her.
So, what else? Well, when you say what else, I don't know what you mean. Like, for example, going to a hotel or something. I don't know about that.
This was my little act of rebellion. After that, Amelia calmed down. A year had passed since Tom and I started dating. On my birthday.
Happy birthday. Thank you.
This is my birthday present for you.
What is it?
Inside the small box was a beautiful ring.
Is this? I want you to marry me. I'm so happy. Please, take good care of me. I will make you happy.
I was over the moon when I accepted the proposal. Not just because I would be with Tom, but also because I could finally leave my parents' house. We kept our excitement in check and went to greet both families. Tom's parents welcomed us more warmly than I had expected. The problem was my family.
So, Emma is getting married. I welcome Tom. Thank you.
Even my parents, who had not been very interested in me, seemed genuinely happy. But Amelia couldn't keep quiet.
What? You're not going to live here? Amelia, what are you saying? You guys live together. We don't have any extra rooms, and that's just not possible. Then we could remodel or something. There are plenty of ways. Don't be unreasonable. We can't do that.
Amelia was unusually anxious. Well, this was part of my plan. After that, Amelia desperately tried to keep me in the house.
Enough already. It's not our place to say anything. Stay out of this. You.
Samuel seemed taken aback by Amelia's antics.
Anyway, we're going to look for a house of our own. Right? Yeah, that's right. So, we're going to look for a house of our own. If you two have decided, then that's what you should do. Thank you.
I'll never forget the look of frustration on Amelia's face when I left home. Now that I could leave my parents' house, I found some peace for a while. Though it was in the next city, we decided to rent a house for a bargain. I never imagined being with the person I love could bring so much happiness. Even though we lived apart, we would gather at my parents' house for the holidays and New Year's. It was just a few months, but I had never been away from home for so long, so I felt a bit nervous.
I'm home. Welcome back. You're home.
Yeah. Where's Amelia?
She went shopping. Mother-in-law, it's been a while. Tom, you look well. Come in.
Sitting on the living room sofa, they brought out an abundance of snacks.
We can't eat all this. Well, it's been a while. But it's only been a few months. Don't be shy.
I hadn't expected such a warm welcome since Amelia was always the priority. Then, Amelia and Samuel returned from shopping. Emma, you're here.
It's been a while.
I greeted them, but Amelia ignored me and went straight to the kitchen.
Tom, long time no see. Gained some weight? No, Emma's cooking is just too good. That's good to hear. You look happy. Thanks to you.
The family gathered, enjoying tea and conversation. Normally, Amelia was talkative, but she was quiet today. After about an hour, my mother noticed something.
By the way, did you buy the usual sweets from the store in front of the station?
I forgot.
Really, be more careful.
But it's not like we need.
What are you saying? It's a tradition. What should we do? Can we still make it if we go now?
Then, Tom offered to go.
I'll go. We came by car today. But that's too much trouble. No, please, let me do this. Sorry, I'll be back soon. Okay.
As Tom was getting ready, Amelia insisted on going with him.
It's my fault for forgetting, and Tom might not know what to buy. Let's go.
Amelia hurried out, pulling Tom by the arm. Seeing them leave, my father let out a heavy sigh. "What's wrong?" "Lately, something seems off."
She's very forgetful, and overall, she seems to lack motivation.
Even my sister Amelia, who used to be doted upon so much, now seems to be treated as a nuisance. My brother-in-law, Samuel, also seemed a bit worn out. It means that the roles between my sister and me had reversed since I moved out. An awkward silence followed. It's only about a 10-minute drive to the station. Yet, it was taking too long. My mother was the first to notice.
"It's taking unusually long, isn't it?"
Indeed. It's been over an hour now. An indescribable anxiety hit me. Eventually, they returned home 30 minutes later.
"You took your time."
The roads were a bit congested.
"Did you get what you went for?"
We did. Amelia handed over the bag she had brought back. However, my mother stopped moving as she looked inside.
"What's this?"
"That's what we were asked to get."
"Where did you go?" "This is completely different." "I understand Tom might not know, but you were with him." "Never mind."
My mother looked tired.
"It doesn't matter anyway."
I could hear her mutter under her breath. Moreover, upon closer inspection, Amelia's hair was more disheveled than before she left. I observed my sister carefully. It seemed Samuel did the same. Our eyes met briefly. It felt like he wanted to say something to me.
"What are you even doing?"
Despite the family gathering, the atmosphere couldn't be worse. Why did it have to turn out like this? Thus, the holiday passed in an awkward atmosphere. Returning home, I felt all the accumulated tiredness surge at once. I ended up falling asleep on the sofa, only to be awakened by Tom talking on the phone.
It's fine. It won't be found out."
I called out to Tom.
"Who are you talking to?"
Tom looked startled and then hung up the phone. Coming over to me.
"Did you wake up? Who was that?"
"A colleague from work."
That sounded quite friendly for a colleague.
As I pressed on, I could sense him getting increasingly irritated.
"Lying won't get you anywhere. What do you want to say?"
"Nothing." Thinking we were getting nowhere, I tried to end the conversation, but Tom wouldn't let go of my arm.
"Do you doubt me? What is it?"
Tom, usually seen as gentle, had a look in his eyes like he was possessed by something.
"It hurts." "Let go." "Then will you stop doubting me?" "I'll do as you say."
Finally, he let go of my arm. When I looked at my arm, the mark was still clearly visible. From that moment, I began to fear Tom. 2 months later, I was on my way to the hospital after a call from my mother. My father had missed a step on the stairs at home and fractured his bone.
"Are you okay?"
"Yeah, somehow."
"You missed a step?"
"Really did something stupid." My father would be discharged from the hospital in a few months, but he would need family support at home until he fully recovered. I felt relieved because Samuel was with us, but unfortunately, he was scheduled for a business trip for 2 months. That day, the family gathered at the house.
"I'm sorry to leave the house at such a time."
"Well, it can't be helped. Don't worry about me and just do your best." "Yes. But what should we do? My back is also bad." "Then, I will." Tom interrupted, offering to take care of my father himself.
"I'll take care of Dad."
"Really? You have work too. It must be hard, right?" "I can't come every day, but I can make it on weekends." "But you're newlyweds, aren't you?"
Emma is okay with it, right? Having a man around is better. Let's do it this way."
"But, do you not care what happens to Dad?"
"I didn't say that."
Seeing that we were not getting anywhere, I reluctantly accepted Tom's offer. Unaware it was the beginning of the worst scenario. From then on, Tom would head to my parents' house every Saturday. At the same time, I started noticing a sweet scent on Tom. I didn't miss it.
"Doesn't it smell sweet?" Do you think so? Like perfume? Perfume!
I could tell that Tom's face contorted. I was certain he was hiding something. I kept pressing with questions.
But I feel like I've smelled it somewhere before. Where was it?
I asked deliberately.
It's probably your imagination.
Really? You don't know? You're being persistent.
I don't know anything about women's perfume.
I didn't miss his statement.
Nobody said anything about it being women's.
How did you know?
Most sweet-smelling stuff is for women, right?
It was a weak excuse.
Tell me what you know.
In that moment, something whizzed past my face. I hesitantly looked behind me. There, a mug lay shattered in pieces.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
I sat down abruptly on the spot. It didn't hit me, but the thought of what could have happened made my hands tremble uncontrollably.
I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a reflex.
I didn't know how to respond. I was reminded of the fear I had felt before. From that moment on, I felt my life was in danger and couldn't confront Tom as strongly as I wanted. My state of mind was reset by a phone call. My father's condition improved, and though it was still awkward, he could walk without crutches. I found out during a phone call.
How are you feeling? Much better. That's good to hear. By the way, how's Tom? He's been a big help. Very considerate.
Hearing that brought me a bit of relief.
Right. Samuel wants your contact info. Is it okay to give it to him? That's fine. But why?
We hadn't exchanged contact information before. Simply, there hadn't been an opportunity. The call from my brother-in-law came that night.
Sorry for calling out of the blue. It's fine. Aren't you coming back soon? Yeah. In about 2 weeks, I guess. I see. About why I asked for your contact.
He began to explain.
What do you mean?
I've been concerned for a while. I couldn't say it until now. To be honest, I've been concerned too.
Emma, you felt that way too, huh?
I'm sorry. But what should we do?
That's exactly it. Then, I'll also be cautious about both of them.
I should be the one doing it, but I can't be there.
I'll let you know immediately if I find out anything. Sorry. Thank you.
I felt a bit relieved knowing my brother-in-law, Samuel, shared my concerns. We couldn't just do nothing. So, I decided to investigate Tom's detailed actions. I quickly arranged for someone to look into it and just had to wait for the results. I wanted to sort things out before Samuel returned, not just for my sake. What do you mean by that? I had arranged for a week-long investigation, but it turned up nothing suspicious. During the weekdays, Tom went to work and came back as usual. On weekends, he would go to my father's house from morning till night as part of his routine. I shared these facts with Samuel.
So, that was it. Was it just a misunderstanding?
Maybe.
It should be a relief that nothing was wrong, but it still feels odd. I get it. It's like an incomplete feeling, isn't it? Maybe because we doubted him from the start.
We decided to carry on with our normal lives, relieved that nothing had happened. There was 1 week left until Samuel's return. 2 days later, my father was able to do things on his own, marking the end of Tom's support.
Thanks for all your hard work. Yeah, thank you. You seem down.
Not really. His words and expression were mismatched. And so, a week passed without any change. On Saturday at noon, I got a call from my parents.
We hate to ask, but can you come over now? I can, but what's up? There's something we need your help with. Okay, I understand.
I quickly told Tom about it.
My parents asked me to come over, so I'll be heading out. Oh, really? Yeah. Got it. Take your time. Okay.
I thought he seemed a bit too pleased. There was a forecast for heavy snow today.
I wish they hadn't asked me to come over on such a day.
When I arrived at my parents' house, both of them greeted me together.
It's cold. So, what's up?
Well, first, just sit down. Then, it was endless small talk.
By the way, where's Amelia? Amelia went out before you arrived. Something about meeting a friend. What? On a day like this? Wait, what did you need from me? What was it again, Mom?
I don't know. What was it?
What? If there's nothing, I'm going home.
You came all this way. Stay a bit longer. At that moment, my parents seemed desperate to keep me there. Eventually, more time passed, and the clock struck 5.
It's snowing quite hard now. Maybe you can't go back. Should you call Tom just in case? Eh? Well, you might not be able to return home.
Then, I'll do that. As my father suggested, I called Tom. Tom quickly ended the call, saying it couldn't be helped. But I had a strange feeling of unease. When I called earlier, it sounded like there was noise coming from somewhere else. Once the thought crossed my mind, I couldn't stop worrying.
Sorry, I'm actually going to head back.
Oh, is that so? Well, if you must. Be careful.
Yeah.
Outside, it seemed about 5 centimeters of snow had already accumulated. Shivering from the cold, I hurried home.
I'm back.
The moment I opened the front door, I sensed something was off. I found women's shoes that clearly weren't mine. I immediately knew he had brought a woman home. Then, hearing voices from the bedroom upstairs, I headed straight for the door.
Wait a minute. That's too sudden. You like this, don't you? She wouldn't do this for you. Don't say that, sis. Call me by my name, like you always do. Besides, you've never called me sister-in-law, have you?
At that moment, I realized that Tom's partner was indeed my sister Amelia. A rage boiled within me, and I pinched my hand to calm the urge to burst in.
I need to keep my cool.
I took out my smartphone and started recording the conversation. I never would have guessed that she was the other woman. Their voices, indicating they were still enjoying themselves, echoed throughout the house.
But why did you choose this house today? Because it's more exciting, and we haven't seen each other recently.
That's true, but we usually meet at our parents' place. We've been careful not to get caught before. Well, she's so clueless she never noticed. You're right about that. She'd never imagine us doing this. Such a fool. I understood why I hadn't noticed their affair until now. I never imagined they were meeting secretly at our parents' house. I had suspected their relationship, but thought it impossible for them to do such a thing in a place with our parents. That's why the investigation I requested showed nothing unusual. Still, thinking it would serve as evidence, I continued to record. I wondered what our parents would think if they heard this. I had to do it to keep my sanity. I thought about confronting them, but my feet wouldn't move. Entering would mean seeing them in the act, which I instinctively didn't want to see.
Hey, when are you going to give me a child? No, that would be bad. Your husband would find out, right? It's okay. If you sleep with him later, he won't suspect a thing. He's so oblivious. What a terrible wife. Not as bad as you. Plus, he won't be back until tomorrow. Meeting up is going to be hard, so it's okay, right? All right.
Listening to their conversation made my head ache and brought on nausea. I was at my limit. I decided to call out to my husband.
Where are you?
Realizing my presence, they seemed to panic and I heard the sound of a window opening. They probably tried to hide on the balcony. But that was the worst decision they could make. Well, that was a mistake. I slowly entered the room. Clothes were scattered everywhere. They had gone outside completely naked. Looking out, I saw them trying to hide at the edge, curled up small. I immediately locked the door. Now, I was thinking about what kind of punishment to give them. I left the bedroom and went downstairs. Heading to the kitchen, I slowly made coffee. After finishing the coffee, I returned to the bedroom. While looking towards the balcony and sipping my coffee, they knocked on the window.
Open this up! I'm going to freeze to death out here.
Of course, I ignored all such nonsense. Then, I had a good idea. I picked up my smartphone and made a call. First to my parents and Tom's parents, saying it was an emergency, and somehow got them to come over. The last person was my brother-in-law, Samuel. I remembered he was supposed to return today.
It was good timing. I was about to contact you. Oh, really? Are you at home? Yes, I am. Did you call because something happened?
Yes, actually. I thought revealing everything now would spoil the surprise.
So, I should come to your house, right? Yes, to my house. I just arrived at the station, so I'll be there soon. See you.
With that, all the pieces were in place. The only thing that puzzled me was Samuel's reaction. It was as if he understood too well what was happening here. Since I couldn't figure it out, I decided to wait for everyone to arrive. Our parents arrived, and I asked them to wait in the living room. 10 minutes later, Samuel arrived.
Sorry, I'm late. The roads were jammed with this snow. No, it's fine. Please, this way.
And so, the family gathered in the living room.
What's the emergency? We rushed here through the snow. Are we going to talk about it now? It's about the two who aren't here. It's understandable if Amelia isn't here, but Tom seems to be missing. That's right. Would you come with me?
I led everyone to the bedroom.
What is this? Look over there.
Pointing towards the balcony, the naked duo was staring back at us.
What's going on?
Thinking it was too dangerous to leave them out any longer, I unlocked the door.
I thought I was going to die. Can we get something warm, please?
I threw blankets at the two.
Someone had better explain what this is about.
My father, blood rushing to his head, looked ready to explode.
The two were having an affair.
My sister, looking up at Samuel in shock, asked,
Why are you here? I came back from my business trip today. That can't be. You told me you were coming back tomorrow.
I had heard it was today. After all, Samuel was here. Confusion set in. Then Samuel began to explain the truth.
I had predicted something like this might happen and had been planning accordingly. Lying to you was part of the plan.
Samuel looked at me. Sorry, Emma. I had to use you too.
Huh?
According to my brother-in-law, Samuel, he had asked our parents for cooperation. That's why I was suddenly told to come to my parents' house. It was Samuel's instruction that my father kept me there.
So, you knew about their relationship? No, it was just a suspicion. I couldn't believe it when Emma reported it to me.
I'm sorry.
I never thought they would do such a thing at my parents' house.
In hindsight, when my father broke his leg and needed care, Tom was eager to volunteer first.
Well, let's leave the explanations at that and think about what to do with these fools who fell for the trap.
The two kept their heads down, unwilling to talk. So, I decided to let everyone listen to the recording.
If you don't want to talk, I'll make it so you can. What are you planning to do? This.
When I played the recording, the voices of the two filled the bedroom, clearly indicating what they had been doing.
Stop it! You're not in a position to say that. Listen to it all.
Everyone's look turned to contempt.
What a joke! You are no longer part of this family. Perhaps it was a mistake to pour so much love into you. Don't ever show your face here again.
See? Tom looked like he was about to cry but desperately bowed his head to my parents-in-law, me, and my father.
I never thought she was that kind of woman. I noticed you were hung up on Tom, but I genuinely loved you. I felt the same way too. Hey! Who said you could talk?
Hatred filled Samuel's eyes. The intensity was almost enough to make one cry.
So, what will you two do now? What do you think? Well, divorce is certain. And then there's the matter of compensation.
Should we throw them outside again? Hearing this, the two made their last stand.
The root cause is you being busy with work and not paying attention to me. That's no excuse for having an affair. If you're going to argue, make it logical. You're just exposing your stupidity. Or should I say, it's already exposed.
My sister couldn't utter a word.
Anything else you want to say? Monkey? I was just led astray by Amelia. Really? Blaming me? You were all in. You even invited me to a hotel that time. That time? When we went shopping together. Ah.
I remembered there was such an incident during Obon. Everything must have started from there.
I just wanted to ask, why did you lure Tom? I was just irritated to see you looking so happy. I've always struggled with men.
So, you were jealous because the man you used to like ended up with me.
That's right. How stupid. This monkey isn't worth it. Maybe you should face reality.
All I could do was laugh.
That's enough. Being involved with these people will only make us stupid. Let's all go. Wait, please. Don't talk to me so casually.
We slowly closed the bedroom door behind us. The snow outside was getting stronger. Staying here wasn't an option, so we headed to the nearest house, our home. On the way, I couldn't help but wonder what would become of the two who were now ostracized by the family. My parents-in-law stayed the night and left the next day. Then, they apologized again and declared that Tom would from now on be a stranger to them.
Shall we go?
Yes. Together, we went to consult about the divorce and compensation. Having the recording made the process much easier. We were able to get the divorce quickly and file for compensation. And today was the day Samuel moved out of the family home.
Thank you for everything.
You were like a son to us. It'll be lonely. Indeed.
If it weren't for this, you two should have gotten married. Stop it, please.
During such a peaceful time, those two showed up. And for some reason, Tom had shaved his head, perhaps as a sign of repentance. Which was so ridiculous I almost laughed.
What are you doing here?
Then, both of them apologized deeply at the same time.
We've been disowned by our parents. You're the only one we can turn to now, Emma. Please. I thought I told you never to show your faces here again. My dad's right. Besides, we're divorced now. In other words, we're strangers. If you understand, then leave quickly.
But they still wouldn't give up.
Even if you do this, it's just a nuisance. Stop showing us such a disgraceful sight. I can't stand to watch any longer.
Then, Samuel offered his hand to Amelia.
Are you going to help?
Watching this, I was nervous.
Help? What misunderstanding do you have? I just wanted you to move because you're in the way.
Trying not to laugh at Amelia's stunned face was a struggle. My stomach started to hurt from holding in the laughter. So, that's the situation. You better go back home.
It looks like my dad's at his limit.
My father was standing with his arms crossed, looking somewhat proud. Seeing this, the two scurried away like fleeing animals.
Finally gone, huh? Then, I'll be off too.
You can come over whenever you like, you know. Since that incident, I've been living at my parents' house. Also, I've kept in touch with Samuel, and we occasionally go out for drinks. What the future holds, I'm not sure, but I'm certain it will be enjoyable.
I'm remarrying a new wife. You're no longer needed.
Following that, my mother-in-law also said something terrible. A useless person should just get divorced and leave. Upon joining us, my father-in-law seemed to understand the situation and yelled, "A wife who can't bear children doesn't belong in our family. Just divorce Roy quickly and let him marry Hannah." Being told such unreasonable things, I just stood there in silence. It was the first time in my life that I was made to feel so miserable. But at the same time, my resolve became unshakable. The time had come for me to raise the signal to counterattack. Seeing my expression, everyone but my sister-in-law froze. They probably thought I was hurt and about to cry, looking down on me like that. Defying their expectations, I said with a broad smile, "I'm already divorced, you know?" And that woman. Hearing my words, my in-laws and Roy gasped in astonishment, uttering a pitiful "huh?" The betrayers were shaking upon discovering the shocking truth. My name is Emily, and I'm a 31-year-old part-time. I married Roy 3 years ago, but we don't have any children yet. When we got married at 28, I was working full-time, and continuing to work would have guaranteed a solid career. That's why I wanted to build my career until I turned 30, then have a child and return to work more easily once childcare became manageable. Roy understood that, and we agreed to start trying for a baby after I turned 30. So, when I turned 30 and was about to start trying in earnest, I went for a checkup just in case, as a friend who was also trying was struggling with infertility. The result was that I found out I have a condition that makes it difficult to conceive, and I decided to switch to part-time work to focus on fertility treatments. Roy works at a real estate company, and we can live comfortably on his salary alone. We were also able to save a little every month, so he was okay with me working part-time. But that's when the nightmare began. Once it became clear I had fertility issues and switched to part-time, Roy's attitude changed drastically. He used to be kind, but suddenly he said, "I'm full-time, you're part-time, so you should take care of everything at home. If I don't earn money, we can't even afford fertility treatments, let alone live. You need to perfectly manage the household to avoid stressing me out." I was good at household chores since I lived alone, so it wasn't too painful. But Roy started to nitpick everything. If the room was a bit messy, he'd say, "You're lazy. What kind of housewife leaves the room this dirty?" And if the dishes weren't washed right after a meal, he'd say, "A woman who puts off even this isn't cut out for a family. Then work more and earn. There are remote jobs and such hiring, right? Well, you're still in charge of all the household chores since you're part-time and I'm full-time." I had just found out about my infertility, so I was feeling down, thinking it was somehow my fault despite Roy being fine. So I wanted to create a relaxing space at home for Roy, who was tired from work, and tried to meet his expectations. Looking back, I realize Roy was just taking advantage of my weakened state. At that time, I convinced myself to endure until I got pregnant, suppressing my feelings. I thought Roy would return to his kind self once we had a child. Hoping for a sliver of hope, I continued with fertility treatments while managing part-time work and household chores. But the strain took its toll, my health deteriorated, fertility treatments weren't going well, and the gap between us grew. Gradually, I couldn't keep up with the housework, my feelings were a mess, and I became more emotional. Roy then said, "You can't even get pregnant and act all high and mighty. If you don't want to be divorced, listen to me." From that day, he clearly looked down on me. He said I was acting all high and mighty just because I asked him to put his socks in the laundry basket instead of leaving them around, and he yelled, "Shut up." So, I spoke up a bit more firmly. Being looked down upon like this made me feel miserable, and I didn't even know what to do anymore. And Roy began to treat me not as his wife but as a convenient woman or a servant, and my heart grew more and more troubled. A year passed in this way. Ultimately, we didn't have a child, and the gap between me and Roy remained. Switching to part-time work and starting infertility treatments, this past year has flown by in a flash. Yet, it's also been the most challenging and painful period of my life. But recently, there's been a change. Roy suddenly started being nice. Not just a little, it was a significant change. It was as if he had become a completely different person, showing more concern for me than ever before. For example, in a month when the infertility treatment didn't work, and I was feeling down, he said, "You okay? How about I make dinner tonight? I can whip up your favorite beef stew." I was half touched, half suspicious. After all the times he'd looked down on me, to see such a drastic shift in behavior made me wonder if there was a catch. So, I asked Roy, "What's up? Anything good happened recently?" He relaxed his face and said, "Yeah, work's been going great. I got selected to be part of a big project. But it means I'll have to do more entertaining and weekend golf, so I might be away from home more." Up to this point, it was all good. My physical burden had lessened, and if Roy's work was going well, it meant our future was secure. If I just accepted Roy's kindness without question, there'd be no trouble. But there was one thing that bothered me. Lately, Roy had become keen on knowing my every move, so I asked him, "Hey, what's going on? You used to not care at all about where I was or what I was doing." Suddenly, Roy burst into anger. "What's wrong with wanting to know what my wife is up to? Emily, are you doing something behind my back that you can't tell me?" From my perspective, it was bizarre for Roy to yell over something so trivial. It seemed more like he was hiding something from me and was being overly nice to cover it up. A friend who had recently divorced told me how her husband started acting nicer just before his affair came out. That's why I started suspecting Roy of having an affair and began to closely monitor his movements as much as he did mine. Then I noticed a pattern. Roy would only go out on Tuesdays, and every second Sunday, he went golfing. On days other than those, if I asked casually where he went, he'd answer normally. But on those specific days, if I asked, he'd snap, "Geez, stop nagging me. It's annoying, you know." It was all too suspicious. I grew more convinced that Roy might be cheating and decided it was time to take serious action. A few weeks later, worn out from the ongoing covert battle with Roy, I needed a break and went on a little trip. It was about a 20-minute drive from our home, but I'd been wanting to check out this cafe that had just opened. I'd heard there might be a line, but I didn't mind waiting, so I went alone and waited for my turn. That's when I ran into my sister-in-law. She's 2 years younger than me, 29, works as a kindergarten teacher, and is bright and kind. She looks up to me like a real sister, and I dote on her like she's my actual sister. When I called out to her, she looked startled and scanned me from head to toe. She usually wouldn't do something like that, so her strange behavior had me tilting my head. "What's up?" At my voice, she blinked rapidly as if snapping out of it and, after a moment of silence, returned to her usual cheerful self. "Let's have lunch together," she suggested, so we changed the reservation to 2 people and sat down together after waiting for a bit. Over lunch, she told me a shocking fact that left me speechless, unable to even eat. After lunch, though originally planning to go home, I changed my plans. I decided to go to my in-laws' house with my sister-in-law. Their house is about a 30-minute drive from our apartment, a place I usually don't stop by. My in-laws aren't exactly fond of me, or rather, they don't like me much, so apart from Christmas, we don't see each other, making this visit quite rare. From the cafe, it's just over a 10-minute drive to their house. My sister-in-law lives alone and usually contacts her mom when she's coming home. But today we decided to go without notifying her. Today is the second Sunday. Roy was supposed to be at his usual business golf, but for some reason, when we arrived at my in-laws' house, Roy's car was parked there. My sister-in-law unlocked the door for us, and we entered. Immediately, my mother-in-law appeared and asked, without hiding her displeasure, "Oh, why is Emily here?" Just the fact that a daughter-in-law stopped by warranted this attitude. I barely managed to suppress a sigh. Then, from deeper inside the house, I heard voices of a man and a woman, and Roy and a woman popped out. Roy momentarily grimaced, but the woman smiled brightly and said, "Nice to meet you. I'm Hannah, and I'll be Roy's wife from now on." While I was stunned, my sister-in-law, with a furious look, confronted Roy and the others, demanding, "Hey, what's this all about? Explain yourselves." Roy sighed deeply. Then, looking at me with a disdainful expression, he dropped a bombshell. "I'm remarrying a new wife. You're no longer needed." Following that, my mother-in-law also said, "A useless person should just get divorced and leave," hurling awful words at me. Strangely, while I managed to stay calm and rational, My sister-in-law, trembling with either anger or sorrow, gave me a look of sympathy. Meanwhile, Roy, Hannah, and my mother-in-law looked down on me with a smug attitude, showing no remorse. Then my father-in-law, attracted by the noise, came in and immediately understood the situation, yelling, "A barren wife doesn't belong in this family. Hurry up and divorce Roy and let him marry Hannah." "Dad," my sister-in-law shouted, trying to stop him, but I slowly raised my head. And that's when I signaled my counterattack. Seeing my expression, everyone but my sister-in-law froze. They probably thought I was hurt, about to cry from being looked down upon like this. Defying their expectations, I smiled broadly and said, "I'm already divorced, though. And about that woman." The implications of my words, especially the fact that I mentioned I was already divorced, left Roy and my in-laws stunned, only able to utter a pathetic "huh?" I wanted to expose Hannah's true identity right then and there. But instead, I sighed and said, "Roy, do you remember the fuss a while ago? When you threatened to divorce me and prepared the divorce papers. Those papers were signed, so I did my part. We're not husband and wife anymore, without needing to be told." Roy, reminded of that incident, lost his earlier composure. Instead, he began looking around frantically, his unease palpable. A few days ago, Roy and I had a fight, and in a fit of rage, he signed the divorce papers and threatened me. The cause of the argument was trivial. I had simply asked him again where he goes every second Sunday. He always evaded the question, and I thought it was about time to get a straight answer. Roy, turning red, shouted in what's become a standard response, "You always ask that. Are you trying to control me? I'm not having it." I was merely asking where he was going, but his extreme reaction to my question about the second Sunday was absurd. Still, Roy kept ranting and stormed out of the house. I wondered where he had gone off to when he returned a while later with the divorce papers. He filled in his section in front of me, then pushed the papers at me, saying, "I can divorce you anytime I want." When I asked him if he really intended to divorce, he nodded emphatically. So, I secretly filled in my section too and kept the papers in my bag, ready to submit at any time. In a way, it was like a talisman. If anything happened, I could use these papers to dissolve our marital relationship, a magic piece of paper. And today, after running into my sister-in-law and hearing a shocking story, reaching my breaking point, I submitted the divorce papers before heading to my in-laws' house. Hearing this, Roy argued, "That was just a threat, I didn't mean it." But my sister-in-law retorted, "You signed it yourself saying you could divorce any time, that clearly shows intent," leaving him speechless again. Sarcastically, I said to Roy, "So, our marriage is pretty much in ruins. Happy now?" Roy was about to say something when his mother interjected with a smug look, "Oh, is that so? Well, we were expecting you to divorce anyway, so that's fine by us." It seemed like Roy's father shared the same sentiment, nodding in agreement. To my in-laws, my divorce from Roy was inevitable, so to them, it was more of a relief than anything else. Hannah, standing next to Roy with an annoying grin, seemed pleased with herself. Noticing this, Roy chuckled smugly, "Yeah, that means I can start my life with Hannah, the first step to our future together." It was disgusting. My sister-in-law looked frustrated, as if embarrassed by these four. To me, these clueless family members and Hannah were just too foolish to take seriously. Ignoring their triumphant looks, I pulled out my phone. Then, I showed Roy and the others a photo that clearly depicted Roy and Hannah in a compromising situation. Timestamped and location tagged. I said to Roy, "I didn't file for divorce on a whim. I've been compiling evidence of your affair from the start," I declared, watching Roy swallow hard. Glancing at him, I added that I intended to demand alimony, right when Hannah burst into laughter. Frowning at Hannah, she blurted out, "So, you've been investigating me too? About that woman, guess you figured it out. I was gonna reveal that I'm pregnant. Too bad, Roy and his parents already knew and even let me stay here on purpose." My sister-in-law was shocked. When we met at the cafe, she had already been informed by Roy and my in-laws that we had divorced. The reason they gave her was shocking. They claimed I was terminally ill and had decided to break up with Roy, who had supposedly made a tearful decision. Roy had told his sister a lie about breaking up due to a fake illness. Hearing this story, I was appalled. According to my sister-in-law, Roy had cautioned her. Emily is despairing over her life now. So, please don't contact her and accidentally upset her. Hence, my sister-in-law avoided reaching out to me, thinking it was for my own good. But upon returning home, she was surprised to find a strange woman living there, introduced as Roy's new wife by my in-laws. She had realized she'd been deceived all along. But hearing about Hannah's pregnancy was new to her. As Hannah gloated, I burst into laughter. Then turned to her. Of course, the detective caught that you're pregnant. But I brought something even more interesting since it's unlikely that Roy and his parents wouldn't know. The atmosphere tensed. Everyone held their breath, wondering what bombshell I would drop next. And the moment I opened my mouth, the silence was broken, and the situation drastically changed. And what I wanted to say is, Hannah is pregnant with another man's child, not Roy's. Hannah's face paled, and Roy was speechless, while his parents slowly turned their gaze towards her. I had spared no expense on a detective to gather irrefutable evidence and information beneficial to me post-divorce. I had requested detailed investigation reports and evidence, including photos with date and time stamps. By the time of our divorce fiasco, I already had enough evidence to confront Roy. The reason Roy only left on Tuesdays and every second Sunday was because those were Hannah's days off from work. Roy inadvertently dug his own grave by filling out the divorce papers, making it a windfall for me. I could have cornered Roy with the evidence I had, but I thought it was too soon. That's because the detective had mentioned that Hannah, Roy's affair partner, seemed to have a dark shadow hanging over her. So, I decided to request a more detailed investigation into Hannah. It turned out Hannah was pregnant, and Roy was aware of it. This was somewhat expected. However, Hannah insisted on going to the doctor alone, stubbornly refusing to take Roy with her. It seemed Roy thought nothing of it. But Hannah had a clear intention to keep another man from suspecting anything. In reality, Hannah was involved with another man, a married man with children, and the child she was carrying was undoubtedly his. The married man, unable to leave his family for Hannah, had agreed to cut ties by paying all expenses related to the pregnancy and a lump sum for child support upon Hannah's request. The agreement was to settle their relationship by paying child support if a test after the child's birth confirmed his paternity. Therefore, it appears that this man was always accompanying Hannah to her doctor appointments, leaving no opportunity for Roy to join. Roy, unknowingly, had dug his own grave by signing the divorce papers, making my case even stronger. I had collected evidence of Hannah entering the maternity clinic with another man and even secured audio recordings, presenting all the proof to them then and there. As Hannah grew visibly distressed, Roy exploded in anger. "You deceived me?" Me, while his parents echoed his outrage. Feeling it was too harsh to gang up on a pregnant woman, I exclaimed, "Enough. This is shameful. You're all in the wrong here. Roy for cheating, his parents for condoning it, and Hannah for planning to use Roy as a fallback. Your actions are nothing but a petty quarrel." Silenced by my outburst, everyone was left speechless. Now that things have come this far, there's no turning back. I've made up my mind. After discovering Hannah's shocking hidden side, there's no way these people could live together anymore. But what I couldn't forgive was Roy. How he bad-mouthed and looked down on me while I quit my job to focus on fertility treatments, and how he suddenly started being nice to avoid suspicion the moment he started his affair. "I've divorced Roy, and I will make sure you all pay me alimony. Hannah, you'll be raising 2 children on your own now, but since you're the one who did this, you better take full responsibility." After saying that casually, Hannah turned pale and exclaimed in shock, "You knew about my other child? How? Where did you?" To make it clear for Roy and his bewildered in-laws, I started to explain. "Hannah has been letting her parents raise her child. She claims to be providing financially, but with another child on the way,
things will change. Her parents are getting older, and it seems she's been looking for a new ATM to help with child rearing. I have evidence of her saying this to her friends with a laugh.
Realizing that ATM implicitly referred to him, Roy looked hurt. But he had no right to feel that way. The in-laws were flustered, and in a panic, my mother-in-law dropped her previous confident demeanor, saying, "So, Hannah's child isn't our grandchild? Then there's no reason to keep her in this house. Leave right now." Conveniently switching her stance. Hannah, in a panic, tried to defend herself. "No, it is Roy's child. Please believe me." But my sister-in-law finally spoke up. "Do you really think saying that now will make anyone believe you? Hannah, do you not realize the mess you've made of people's lives?" And with that, Hannah fell silent. Then, my sister-in-law dropped a bombshell.
"Aren't you the mother of a boy who goes to the daycare where I work? The one always brought in by his elderly grandparents. His name wouldn't happen to be Henry, would it?"
Hannah's eyes widened. She opened her mouth to respond but ended up closing it without saying anything. Her silence affirmed my sister-in-law's question. Shocked, my mother-in-law collapsed on the spot, and my father-in-law looked back and forth between us, panicking. It seemed like the right moment. I presented Roy with an ultrasound image, saying,
"Thanks to the fertility treatments, I successfully got pregnant with your child. I was about to tell you after dealing with the morning sickness, but then your affair became undeniable. This child is undoubtedly yours. We won't be living together, but expect to pay child support." Roy looked devastated, but my audacious mother-in-law chimed in, "If there's a child, then she still has the right to be a wife. I'm sorry, we were just misled by this woman. Please, Emily, come back to us." Ignoring her, I turned to leave the house. As my mother-in-law called out to me repeatedly, I turned back once and said, "What are you doing? You never liked me from the start, and once you found out Hannah was pregnant with your son's child, what action did you take? You're beyond brazen."
Taken aback by my confrontation, my mother-in-law lowered her head again. My father-in-law, perhaps realizing their folly, said nothing more. After all, they discarded me just as I no longer needed to acknowledge them as family. Stepping outside, my sister-in-law repeatedly apologized, asking if there was anything she could do. I said, "Just make sure they don't get away with this. From now on, I'll be handling things through a lawyer with Roy. And from now on, let's not be sister-in-law and sister-in-law but friends instead." Surprised, my sister-in-law nodded and said, "Let's get through this together." Following that, I hired a lawyer and demanded alimony. They pleaded inability to pay the substantial amount I demanded, but after I threatened legal action and assured them of my relentlessness, they reluctantly agreed. Hannah's affair with the married man came to light, leading to a confrontation and eventually reaching his wife's ears, causing an uproar. Consequently, overwhelmed by our demands, Hannah turned to her parents, who, after scolding her, came to us to apologize and settled the amount in full. Hannah desperately turned to her parents' home for help. Naturally, she was severely scolded by her parents, who then dragged her to our place to apologize. After giving birth, Hannah will have no choice but to work from dawn till dusk, making it impossible for her to indulge in affairs ever again. Despite being incredibly irresponsible, given she has children, Hannah is now under the strict financial control of her parents, unable to find any release for her stress. Having lived selfishly until now, I hope she lives for her children from here on out. On the other hand, Roy faced a disastrous fate as well. While it was good he paid me the alimony, he had to sell the family home to come up with the money. Now, he and his parents are huddled together, living in a cramped, run-down apartment. Although I agreed to allow him to pay child support in installments, as expected, there were defaults. He probably thought a little delay would be fine, based on whatever he read online. I had warned I would be relentless. I promptly took legal action for enforcement. This resulted in his company being notified, revealing his divorce and child support delinquency. His reasons for leaving work on time to spend time with Hannah while his wife was undergoing fertility treatments were also exposed, subjecting him to scorn. Eventually, he quit his job and took on debt to pay me the child support I demanded. Now, Roy is trapped in a lifetime of debt hell, with his parents also collapsing alongside him. Roy works solely for debt repayment, and his parents can no longer enjoy a graceful retirement but must return to work. Their irresponsible blaming of each other led to daily disputes, so much so that the police were called for disturbing the peace. Now, they seem to be working quietly to manage the debt, complaining all the while. Afterwards, I moved back in with my parents, apologizing and living with them for a while. Thanks to my parents' support post-delivery, things eventually got better, and my former employer even offered me my job back as a full-time employee. I also arranged for my daughter to be taken care of at the daycare where my sister-in-law works, which was a relief. Now, living away from my parents, I'm a mother raising my daughter alone, but I'm managing well thanks to the support and kind words from those around me. I've decided to cherish these invaluable connections and raise my precious daughter to be a fine person. My kind and gentle father-in-law passed away after a long illness. His funeral, attended not only by family members but also by many of his business associates due to his wide circle of acquaintances, turned out to be a grand affair.
I too wish to be sent off by my family and many friends like this at my end. I'll pick out some background music, so I'm counting on you.
My husband told me without changing his usual attitude, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. To me, it was outrageous coming from him.
Ask your real family for that. We're just a family for show, after all. There's no obligation to go that far, right?
I declared, claiming to know all his secrets and confronting him with just a bit of evidence. His face turned pale and he freaked out.
All of Dad's stuff is going to be inherited by me, his son.
These words, blurted out in panic, only led my husband to face further hell. I moved in with my in-laws immediately after getting married. Although I was hesitant when the idea of living with my in-laws was first proposed before marriage, it would be a lie to say I didn't consider it. However, my in-laws were very kind people, and my husband assured me he would always be on my side, no matter what. Encouraged by the kindness of my in-laws and my husband's strong words, I decided to move in. After getting married, I continued working for a while but decided to quit my job just before turning 30 and became a full-time housewife. Partly because I wanted children and partly because my father-in-law's health was gradually declining. He kept working, saying it was too early for him to retire, but he started spending more time at home, going out less on his days off. My mother-in-law suggested he go to the hospital, but he never went, dismissing it as just a decline in physical strength that comes with age. Soon, my pregnancy became evident. My father-in-law, looking forward to the birth of his grandchild, seemed to gradually regain his spirits upon learning of my pregnancy. When my son was born, seeing him happily holding the baby made our family bond stronger, and we deeply felt our happiness. About a year after my son's birth, my husband was transferred to a different department at work. His job content seemed to change, leading to increased overtime. He came home late, catching the last train for half the week, and by the latter half of the month, his overtime hours exceeded the limit, leaving him unpaid for extra work. I doubted the sense in working overtime under such conditions. If it was a company mandate, it seemed clearly exploitative, and I thought it might be better to take action. Meanwhile, my husband started staying out more, citing business trips. Despite being a weekday, he often came home late from drinking parties. Gradually, he started making more excuses to go out alone on weekends and holidays as well. I had tolerated his absence from home on workdays without complaint. Understanding from my own work experience that unpaid overtime was sometimes necessary to finish work. I understood that such things inevitably happen when you're working. However, I couldn't understand why he would be so busy as to give up his holidays as well. Recently, having seen news stories about overwork deaths, I couldn't help worrying about his health. My husband, perhaps annoyed by my interference, began to be vague about his reasons for going out.
Hey, who exactly calls a family man out on his day off? Someone from work? They know you have a young child, right?
We had received birth gifts from his colleagues and his direct boss. So I found it hard to believe that they would overwork him. There was a time when such practices were tolerated, but nowadays, companies that encourage leaving on time and discourage working on holidays are becoming more common. I wanted to speak out against any company or boss that would deliberately do the opposite.
Don't meddle in a man's work. I don't want to meddle in your work. But is it too much to ask for you to act a bit more like a father? I'm earning money as a father, aren't I? What more do you want?
And so, our conversations always ended in arguments. My mother-in-law also warned that if things continued this way, my husband would become a stranger rather than a father to our child, but her attempts to stop his outings were utterly ineffective.
First of all, the reason I can never relax is because you're completely failing as a wife.
It started with him saying I should stay up and wait for him to come home because I'm his wife, questioning why I would ever eat before him, and stating it's obvious that he should be the first to take a bath. Essentially, my husband began to dictate how a wife should behave. Once our child grows a bit, I might be able to adjust my meals and wake-up times to match my husband's. But right now, with a young child, it's inevitable that our life centers around the child more than my husband. My mother-in-law strongly opposed him on this matter.
Basically, you lack feminine charm. Before being a mother, you're my wife and a woman, right? Women like you must be what they mean when they say a woman gives up being a woman once she gets married. I'm just unlucky to have married such a woman.
How can I be expected to keep up appearances and take care of the house and child? If you want me to stay beautiful, help out with the child rearing. If I had time to put on makeup, I'd rather lay down for a bit, and even if I want to refresh my wardrobe, shopping with a child is anything but relaxing. Without my husband's help in taking care of our child, maintaining the image of the beautiful wife he demands is impossible. Just saying whatever he wants. His uncooperative attitude made me suspect him of cheating. There were several signs that led me to suspect infidelity. I might be accused of taking dramas and stories from cheated-on wives too seriously, but the frequent business trips, weekend work, and calls to come in on holidays were telling. The scarce time he spent at home, the many outings under the guise of work, mentioning his boss or colleagues to justify his departures. There was no trace of women's cosmetics or perfume on him, nor excessive credit card use, but his attitude of "don't complain, I'm giving you living expenses," was suspicious. It's as if he was told that as long as he provides financially, nothing else should matter. Around that time, my father-in-law's previously diagnosed illness worsened. With my mother-in-law's persuasion, he finally underwent tests at the hospital, but his disease was chronic and would require ongoing management. My father-in-law, already retired, was living a life of medication and compromise, with my husband's income supporting our household. Perhaps this financial pressure was why my husband's attitude became more domineering and harsh. Even with two women, there's a limit to how much we can support my father-in-law. He decided to be hospitalized to avoid a sudden turn for the worse, considering the burden on me and my mother-in-law. Going to visit him in the hospital was challenging. There was no suitable hospital nearby, and it took about 30 minutes by car to reach a large hospital equipped to deal with his condition. Neither my mother-in-law nor I drive, so we had to rely on taxis or public transport. How much easier it would have been if my husband could just drive us. Visiting? Carrying stuff? It's not necessary.
It's just my dad making a big deal out of a checkup and hospital stay.
My husband dismissed the idea of visiting the hospital and never once went. Even when I said it would help if he just drove us close by, he insisted that my mother-in-law and I were exaggerating and let time pass without offering any assistance. As my father-in-law's condition deteriorated, despite our desperate care, he passed away. A few days before his death, my husband said he had a long business trip. This was when the doctor had told us he had only a couple of days left. What kind of company forces work at a time like this? I rarely raised my voice, but I couldn't help but lash out at my husband. But he just retorted, "Who do you think you're living off?" and left. My mother-in-law had hurt her back caring for my father-in-law, so we stayed at a nearby hotel to tend to him. There was no time to merely grieve. We were busy arranging the funeral and everything that came with it. My father-in-law was a highly respected man, and despite being retired, many of his former colleagues and subordinates attended his funeral. Many volunteered to help, providing great relief to my mother-in-law and me. No family member spoke ill of him. They tearfully shared memories of my father-in-law. His funeral was a warm and gentle farewell. However, my husband, who acted as the chief mourner, ruined the funeral's peaceful atmosphere with his behavior at the meal afterward.
Hey, we need more booze here. And we're running low on meatloaf at this table. You're the wife, you should be more attentive.
We had entrusted the funeral arrangements to the funeral home, anticipating a large turnout. The staff could have easily handled requests for additional drinks or food. Yet, instead of speaking directly to them, he first demanded of me. Moreover, during my father-in-law's battle with illness, my husband embarrassed me in front of distant relatives who couldn't visit and his company colleagues by saying things like, "Sorry for my useless wife. She's just like that at home too, and she leaves all the caregiving to my mother and the hospital while she just lazes around at home, the worst kind of wife." But that's exactly what he was doing. I was furious but realized arguing would just put me on the same level as him. So, I swallowed my irritation and said, "Please let me know if there's anything I can do," despite my shortcomings, trying to maintain his dignity. But when my mother-in-law suggested it might be time to wrap up, nearly everyone had stayed till the end, mourning my father-in-law. Seeing this, my husband muttered something about wanting to be sent off by family in the same way. He might not have been aware he spoke aloud, but I heard him clearly and thought, "How dare you say that?
Since I can't fulfill that wish, why don't you ask your other family?"
When he looked puzzled, I mentioned his wish to have a funeral attended by family like his father's. Realizing his thoughts had slipped out, he started making excuses in a panic.
"I'm a good husband, right? We're not struggling financially, and our future's secure, right? What's wrong with talking about my ideal funeral?"
However, the remaining relatives were puzzled by the mention of another family, looking back and forth between us. It was only then my husband realized the gravity of the situation. Sweating and eyes darting around.
"Another family? No idea what you're talking about. Maybe my dad had a secret child or something?"
Despite his attempts to feign innocence, I pulled out a document entrusted to me by my father-in-law and shoved it in front of my husband, turning his face pale. It was as if I was watching the blood drain from his face. Turns out, I wasn't the only one suspecting my husband of cheating. I only harbored suspicions, but never actually took any action. More accurately, I wanted to act but couldn't. As a stay-at-home mom, I had limited funds and couldn't just go to a detective agency or follow him around with our son in tow. But my father-in-law had used his savings to hire a detective to investigate my husband's behavior. Even before I had noticed anything, my father-in-law wanted to hand over the evidence of my husband's infidelity to me, while he still had the consciousness and had called me over to do so. Shortly after giving me the documents, he passed away. He had introduced me to a lawyer friend in case I needed help. I had already consulted with my mother-in-law the day I received the documents. We decided to confront my husband after all funeral-related matters were settled, thinking it inappropriate to involve the relatives in our personal issues until then. But with my husband continuing his self-centered behavior, disregarding our feelings, I decided not to hold back any longer.
"Thinking you could get away with just an affair was a big mistake,"
I said, scattering not just the paper with evidence of his infidelity but also photos of them being affectionate, entering love hotels, on vacations together.
"There's a child involved with your mistress, right? When's the due date?"
It aligns with when my father-in-law decided to be hospitalized. While my mother-in-law and I were caring for him, you were getting your mistress pregnant. My mother-in-law was furious. I was worried her blood pressure would skyrocket. Some relatives tried to calm her, while others condemned my husband as a disgrace to the family. With no one on his side, my husband kept making feeble excuses to get through the situation.
I was just hanging out with a girl from the bar, that's all.
Even though his excuses for the trips and hotels might somehow make sense. They were desperately weak. Among the relatives, some who own bars pointed out that getting someone pregnant is way beyond normal socializing if you're not working there. Even if it was just hanging out at a bar, a man with a wife and child should decline intimate after-hours or companionship out of respect for his wife. My husband might have thought that mentioning his connections to bar owners would win him some sympathy from the male relatives. However, not a single male relative showed any sympathy for him. Instead, they looked at him with disgust and criticized him. Then my husband became defiant. He had planned to keep his affair hidden until he received his estate from my father-in-law, but since it was out in the open, he saw no need to hide it anymore. He stated that once the inheritance was settled, he would divorce me, marry his mistress, and start a new life with a new family.
All this is your fault, you're such a failure of a wife. Dad favored you because you must have flirted with him behind our backs, right? Compared to Mom, even someone like you would seem better.
Hearing this, my mother-in-law cried out, "What a disgrace you are," and then broke down crying. My father-in-law had been kind and attentive to me because I had lost my own father early on. I had confided to him that I didn't know what it was like to have a father. That conversation happened in the presence of my mother-in-law, who said it was okay to think of my father-in-law as my real father. So, I admired and was sometimes spoiled by my father-in-law as if he were my real father. My in-laws had always wanted a daughter, so they treated me not just as a daughter-in-law but as their own daughter. That's all there was to it. To equate the affection of my in-laws with something romantic was outrageous. My husband's rotten brain, which linked every interaction with the opposite sex to romance, made me nauseous. Into this chaotic scene stepped a man. The lawyer my father-in-law had introduced to me. The lawyer told my husband, "You're not getting any inheritance, you know?" If my husband hadn't brought up the inheritance, the lawyer might have just watched to see how things unfolded. But since my husband mentioned divorcing after getting his inheritance, the lawyer thought it best to clarify the facts sooner. My father-in-law had rewritten his will in his hospital room, not long before he passed away, wanting to ensure my mother-in-law and I could inherit without leaving anything to my husband. My husband insisted he had a right to some portion of the inheritance as his son, confident at least in receiving the legal minimum share. My father-in-law had anticipated such a scenario and arranged his estate so that even if my husband made a claim for his statutory share, he would receive next to nothing.
When I say next to nothing, after deducting legal fees and such, it might even be less than nothing,
said the lawyer. I'm not sure how much lawyers charge, but knowing my father-in-law, he made sure the amount my husband could get would indeed be minimal. My husband, who worked for a decent company and believed he would be financially well off after inheriting, had been squandering money with his mistress ever since he found out about his father's illness and retired early. He was convinced the inheritance would more than cover his expenses. My husband worked for a pretty good company, so his salary was decent. However, the living expenses he bragged about providing were meager compared to his salary, and when I questioned this, he made excuses about salary cuts and missing bonuses, but it seems all that money was actually spent on his affair. My father-in-law was a high-ranking executive at a major company. I heard that when my father-in-law retired early and was rehired, thanks to his respected personality, he got rehired under very favorable conditions. I remember my husband bragging that he never struggled with money. Perhaps that's why he thought he would inherit millions, maybe even up to $2 million. My husband collapsed to the floor in shock. My mother-in-law, crying and furious, wondered aloud how her son turned out this way, blaming herself. I believe, while parents' influence is significant during childhood, it's up to the individual once they enter society. It seems my husband could be easily influenced by the people he associated with. My husband's attitude worsened after starting his affair, perhaps influenced by his mistress. Even if the mistress was the root cause, as an adult, my husband is responsible for his own actions. How did it come to this? He kept asking himself, shouting. The relatives and my mother-in-law looked at him coldly and threw him out.
I'm the chief mourner. You can't do the cremation or burial without me. Show some respect.
You don't need a chief mourner to carry out a cremation. After all, cremation is a legal obligation, and failing to do so would mean we'd be charged with abandoning a corpse. The placement of ashes doesn't require a chief mourner either. Just some useless idiot blabbering. We said dismissively, effectively erasing my husband's presence. Weeks later, when my husband unexpectedly returned to the family home, I confronted him with divorce papers. He claimed he was the one who should be initiating the divorce, but I informed him that since he was the one who cheated, if I dragged my feet, the divorce wouldn't go through easily. I considered dragging it out as a form of resistance or retaliation, but with a child involved, that wasn't the best option. For my son's sake, we needed to change our environment quickly. My husband was unhappy about losing control, but since he also wanted the divorce to happen soon, he reluctantly agreed to my terms. However, that didn't mean I wanted anything more to do with him. My mother-in-law and I told him to enjoy his new family and kicked him out of the family home. His belongings were already tossed in a corner of the yard. I told him we'd send the rest to his new address, fully ejecting him from our lives. Later, he showed up with his mistress. Both looking defeated yet strangely triumphant. The mistress taunted me, suggesting I must be bitter for losing my husband and claimed it was just deserts for neglecting my appearance. She then gloated that the estate would all be my husband's, leaving me penniless in the divorce. It seemed my husband hadn't told her about being left with nothing. She arrogantly claimed her unborn child would have a better life than my son, who would be living with a penniless mother. Just then, a message from my husband popped up on my phone. Calmly asking the mistress to wait, I checked the message. My husband was demanding child support for the unborn child, claiming it would be unfair for the siblings to live in different circumstances. While my in-laws might consider both children their grandchildren, could I really feel affection for a child conceived while my father-in-law was suffering? I ignored my husband's demand and revealed to the mistress details about her I hadn't mentioned to my husband yet, including her name, workplace, and family background. She freaked out, knowing her secrets. The mistress was furious, wondering how I knew so much about her background. When she raised her hand to me, I warned. Going to hit me? I'd sue for assault. Everything here is being recorded by surveillance cameras. Pointing to the camera in the corner, she reluctantly lowered her hand. My father-in-law had advised me to always keep evidence. So with the help of relatives, we had installed cameras after his funeral. I told my husband that the documents my father-in-law left clearly stated the mistress was his direct subordinate, and I would report their affair to his company. It didn't matter who seduced whom. They were both consenting adults in the affair. My husband begged me not to report him, clinging to my legs. Disgusted, I shook him off. Knowing they couldn't afford to have the evidence against them, they left without further resistance. Later, I sued my husband for alimony and child support and the mistress for compensation, through a lawyer introduced by my father-in-law. As I expected a response, the mistress called me in a fury. Having gotten my number from my husband's phone, she wrongly assumed I'd forgive and back down if she kept quiet. She ranted about misunderstanding the situation and regretted not hitting me when she had the chance. I never said I'd forgive. I merely stated I'd sue for assault if she attacked me. The call went silent. I suspected they were up to no good, but surprisingly, the next words were an apology. The mistress started by saying she had been informed by the lawyer I hired that my mother-in-law and I were to receive my father-in-law's inheritance, and nothing was left for my husband. She apologized for her past behavior and asked if some of the estate could be shared with my husband, suggesting perhaps the claims for alimony and such could be waived as a result. I argued that an apology doesn't erase everything and that matters like these should not be settled lightly but with tangible resolutions. In other words, I rejected the mistress's request. I had no intention of agreeing to any sort of deal. My husband, who was listening in, began arguing with her about the plan going awry, leading to a major fight between them. They were both so out of touch with reality, perhaps they deserved each other. I wanted as little as possible to do with my husband's face or voice. I was ready to take this to court if necessary, but that would be more troublesome for him. Especially since I heard his direct boss despises dishonesty. When I mentioned that this could become known to his boss, my husband quickly agreed to my terms for divorce, alimony, and child support. Apparently seeing his boss as a significant threat. The mistress, however, brazenly challenged me to report them, so I did just that, as she wished. It turned out to be quite the blowback for my ex-husband, but it's his fault for not being able to control his affair partner. I later found out that my ex-husband's boss was a woman who had divorced due to her husband's affair with a younger subordinate, much like my situation. Upon hearing my report, she promised to impose the most severe penalty possible. Both ended up being relocated to different positions as a punishment. My ex-husband reluctantly accepted the reassignment, but his affair had become known even at his new location, leading to his eventual resignation. The mistress protested the reassignment to HR but to no avail, and, faced with raising a child, she quit, not wanting to work in such a place. With my ex-husband unemployed, he couldn't cover alimony and child support with his savings alone and ended up in debt. The only lenders willing to deal with an unemployed person were dubious at best, so he's now chased by repayments. We changed all the locks at the family home, making it impossible for my ex-husband to return even if he wanted to. Homeless, he moved into the mistress's apartment. But continued unemployment led to eviction threats due to unpaid rent. They ended up turning to the mistress's parents' home, but things didn't go as planned. While her parents scolded her, they still took her in, along with her newborn. Her parents said the child was innocent and allowed her to live at their home but refused to provide any support for childcare. Or her actions that led to the destruction of my family. However, my ex-husband, having dishonored their beloved daughter, incited the wrath of his mistress's parents and was driven out. Rejected by her parents as trash. My ex-husband couldn't return to the family home or seek help from relatives. His dreams of a happy life with a younger woman shattered by reality. The reality is being abandoned by both families, losing work, and having nowhere to belong. He's now living in a dingy, bathroom-less apartment, cutting corners to pay off the debt from the lawsuit and monthly child support. Struggling to find steady work, he's living day-to-day on odd jobs. Yet, the mistress hasn't abandoned him. Working hard herself for their young child. And the worthless man she's chosen. Despite being betrayed, I now feel grateful she took this loser off my hands. Thanks to my father-in-law, I was able to push this shallow man to his limits. As a parent, I understand the difficult decisions involved in protecting a child. Now, as a mother, I'm determined to do anything for my son. I'm not sure I could make the same tough choices as my father-in-law if faced with his situation. But I'm committed to raising my son properly. We're now living modestly in the family home my father-in-law left. Trying to grow and learn together as a new mother and son.